Lord Vader, Operation Andor is underway.
Excellent. If we release 3 episodes per week, the Lorehounds will never be able to cover every episode. The Imperial forces will crush the rebellion before it begins.
Stand by. We're picking up something on our scanners.
Echo Squadron, reporting in.
Delta Squadron, on your left.
Tango Squadron on your 6.
With Imperial forces coming in fast, we're calling all rebels to join the fight this season. Starting after the April 22nd premiere, you'll hear 3 full breakdowns for each week's episodes of Andor Season 2. Each podcast will be led by one of our squadron leaders, Alicia, David, and John. We'll be bringing in new and familiar voices to fill out the roster. Search for the Lorehounds on any podcast platform to join us in a galaxy far, far away. And don't forget to check out our season pass for even more content like our Holocron bonus pods. It's good news for anyone, except Darth Vader.
Attention all units. We've got our sights on a new episode of Andor. We're going to need some recon on this.
Delta Squadron, on your left.
Mission's all yours, Squadron Leader. To anyone else on this comm link, send all transmissions to andor@thelorehounds.com and get Holocron bonus episodes for 10 credits with our season pass in the show notes. Rebels, may the Force be with you.
Welcome to the Lorehounds Andor podcast. I'm David from the Lorehounds, and we're your guides to a galaxy far, far away. This is our coverage of Andor Season 2, Episode 6, titled, What a Festive Evening. With the triple drops for this season, we're doing our coverage squadron style. Each week, John will be covering the first episode, Alicia the second, and I'll be covering the third. And each week, we're going to have a different co-pilot join us. My co-pilot for today is our favorite Tolkien scholar, Marilyn R. Pakila. Marilyn, how are you doing?
Doing fine, David. How about yourself?
Good. And I don't know if it's Providence or Kismet or maybe even the Force, but we had some amazing feedback from it started on the Discord community, and I actively solicited people. I'm like, write me an email.
You sure did. And it's wonderful. It's
and
really
it's Tolkien
rich.
Crossover perfect. So having you to be able to talk about this is like a gift.
Well, thank you. And thanks to the folks who posted those things. You'll hear their names or their tags or whatever.
When we get to the feedback. Yep. And this is your second week, because last week you were with John for the kickoff.
Correct, which was very exciting to be the first of the first squadrons. Yes.
Exactly. And I think we've all been having a lot of fun with this squadron style. So we're really so grateful that we have such a great community of people to talk with and to cover this amazing show with. I've got a couple of more notes. First off, we got a bunch of feedback, sort of production-related feedback, not like show-related feedback. And I just want to let you know, if you wrote in and you haven't heard back from us, we did read them. We hear you. We appreciate the nature in which you sent us that feedback. I'll just put an asterisk. I was traveling last week, and I didn't have a time to sit down and triple watch the episode and do what I would normally do. I was at a business conference, and I was leading a session actually, and I had to prepare and watch the show. It was just madness. So, but rest assured, we're locked in, and we are, with all intensive purposes, our attention is fully on this show. So
bring in my A game as best I can.
That's right.
I'll apologize in advance for any, mistakes, confusions.
Well, I think that's an important point. This was going to be another note in just a second, but our personal Star Wars backgrounds, I believe you and I are both just regular fans of Star Wars.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I'm an OG from May 1977 when I sat down in that auditorium and saw for the first time the glory and the majesty of it all. And I've mostly only followed the films. Recently, people have gotten me into Rebels, and I've dipped in and out of Clone Wars at the advice of various people who said, this is good, you can skip this arc, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then mostly now what I've learned is from the podcast, from hearing you all talk. I've been with Alicia on her Star Wars Timeline podcast.
Right, Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast.
Canon Time,
right.
excuse me, Canon Timeline.
I know
podcast.
It's a mouthful.
Beginning to learn more about the difference between canon and non-canon.
Right.
I think I've only read one book, and that was Ahsoka, which I liked very much.
Very cool.
I've been following all of the series since they've been coming out too. So Ahsoka and Mandalorian and all the other things. So that's kind of where I'm situated. But don't ask me about book lore versus film lore versus whatever, because I'm just not there.
Right. And I too am a child of 77, although probably I was a little bit shorter to your knees than
by
looking
about
you in the eyes.
Decade or so.
Yeah, maybe. I was about 10 when it came out. Yeah. And like you, I'm mostly an on-screen fan, dipped in and out of Rebels, Clone Wars, that kind of stuff. Haven't played any of the game. Well, no, I did play some of the mid 90s games, a couple of them, but not read any of the books or any of that kind of stuff. And this brings up an interesting point. And let me just give the all spoiler warning.
Absolutely.
Since we're on the third episode of the second drop, we can talk about episodes 4 and 5 without worrying about anything.
Or even 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, exactly. And so all of Andor is on the up for discussion, as well as anything that we might know or not know about Star Wars in the entire world. Fortunately, we have within our I don't know, your battalion, our air wing, I guess you could say. Alicia squadron. Is our expert lore and lore master, and she is able to write us notes and give us all kinds of insights and interesting things into it. John is also very knowledgeable, but Alicia really is top of her game with this stuff. Definitely. So, and I think I had a point and I forgot what that point was.
How we come across or what we do and don't know? Or?
Yeah, no, now I don't remember, but it doesn't matter. It's fine. Let's keep moving forward.
The base information is there.
Yeah, exactly. And then we just want to make sure that people have a clear expectation of who we are and how we come to the property.
Sure.
So that there's not a mismatch in you, listener, your expectations about what we do. Oh, I know what I was going to say now. It did come back to me.
I thought it would.
This brings up a very interesting point. We could probably talk about it later, but I want to put a little pin in it, which is there is and we were talking about this on the community Discord today, that Tony Gilroy himself is not a lore expert, and he's not fawning. He's not doctrinal in his relationship to Star Wars canon. It's merely the tapestry in which he's telling the story. And I think when we can come to the story without being an expert in the lore and in the canon, it is a really available story for us. And I think that's something special about Andor. A lot of times we talk about, this city is a character. New York City is a character in this story that we're watching. The lore in this series, Andor, is not a character. It's important. The characters are firmly rooted in it, the timeline, everything.
Sure.
And there's a lot of respect paid to it, but he's also not centering the lore as, we want to tell this story about this lore. We want to tell this story about these characters. And I think that's... Yeah.
They're telling a story about rebellions and
exactly
how they happen and what the costs are.
Exactly. And so we can approach it from that wider general storytelling viewpoint rather than being ultra deep nerd or ultra deep experts on the Star Wars canon lore.
Sure.
Right. So we're also going to shift our tactics a little bit. We've mostly been covering these podcasts in a thematic based way, so in the major plot arcs. But today we're going to do a little bit more of a scene by scene, and then we're going to lump the last 3 scenes together because of the way that this episode was constructed. Doing the thematics was very hard for me to parse my brain. And so it's scene by scene, and then right up until the conclusion of the episode, and then we just talk about the 3 major storylines that resolve out of it. So we got to match our tactics to whatever's in front of us.
Yes.
Marilyn, that's enough preamble. Let's get right into our hot takes. What did you think of episode 6 of season 2? And if you need to throw in some stuff from episodes 4 and 5, by all means, but what did you think of this as the capstone to this drop of 3 episodes?
Well, they definitely landed the plane for this arc.
Nice.
And I got to say, I had my doubts.
Wow.
It was hard for me to watch 4 and 5.
Okay.
It was a very deep exploration of trauma, which, for some people is very difficult.
We've been having a lot of conversation on the Discord about this.
We certainly have,
well.
And it's been very productive.
Amazing, right? For an online community, the nuance and depth of conversation is exquisite.
And the support. I think
absolutely
that's what's so important.
Yeah.
And I really like how they brought those issues, if not to resolution, at least, didn't stick with tired old tropes.
There are a couple of tropes in there, but
yes,
we'll get to those.
There are, but you see, so much depends on people's individual experience.
It's true.
How they react to things.
Mm-hmm.
And to some degree, because, trauma is so very personal and depicted in so many different ways, you can say, well, yes, that resonates for me, and no, that doesn't. And that's perfectly valid. I think that's the bottom line for me.
Right.
And I think they did it that way. For me, the biggest message, very much connected with this, is love does not fix. Love accompanies the healing journey, whatever that may look like. And everybody's healing journey is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make assumptions that, oh, this is what you need, when maybe it really isn't. And finally, people started to listen to Bix and what she wanted.
What she needed to
do. And that's why I found it so satisfactory.
Rather than just boxing her up and saying, poor little bunny, and patting her on the head and saying, get better soon. We love you. We miss you.
Right.
You needed this question of agency.
And the whole question of, depicting a survivor as better because they fought back and help us if they didn't. That's all nonsense to my mind.
Right.
Everybody has to respond the way they have to respond. And Bix kept telling people, this is how I want to respond. I don't want to be confined, because what's to prevent me from just spiraling? And I think Cassian finally heard that. I think Luthen finally heard that. And I missed one piece of that whole dynamic. But somebody on the Discord pointed it out. So when we get to that point, I will definitely say that. I love the French resistance vibes of Ghorman. I put a post myself in Discord about the whole connection with the silk industry. Made me think immediately of Lyon, and that was made Nazi headquarters, and the way they used their industry to help with their resistance. Just quite spectacular, and even fascinating to realize that Lyon is in the region of France, which is closest to the Germanic-speaking part of Switzerland. So this idea of combining a language which is somewhat Germanic and somewhat French, I really like that a lot. There's another theme for me of, we were talking about the difference between the rebellion and revolution, and some people
that was a really interesting thread that was brought up.
It's not a revolution unless you win, which I don't know. And the bottom line for me is people die. Call it what you like. People die. I loved the go slow to go fast coming up again on both sides. I find it interesting how he's drawing parallels in some respects between the two sides as we see it. Also, I think we're taking a close look at this question. In violent conflicts, are loved ones assets or liabilities? And how do you decide to support them so that they can become the former and not the latter?
Right.
I find myself wondering, which way is Cyril going to turn?
Lots of discussion about that too.
Yeah.
Is there a redemption arc for Cyril?
Yeah. And then finally, for me, the theme of heroes acting individually and so forth, and communities. That heroes have to come from communities to some degree and have support for them. But it's also important, and perhaps this is one of Gilroy's intentions, to recognize that community action, whether or not people are ever known by name, is as significant, and in some ways even more important, because you can take out the top of the evil, whatever it is, again and again and again. But if you don't change your systems, it's just an endless cycle. And force versus force, that's not the way to go forward and build a different type of community. system. So I think that's what he's getting at. So,
and I think that was part of the conversation of the revolution versus rebellion.
Yes, it was.
Which changing a system as opposed to changing the leadership of said system.
Yeah. And can I say, this is what's so exciting for me? We're bringing in new people with this. And the community, as we've already said, is just fabulous on the Discord channels. Listeners, if you're not there, wow, I think you're missing out on something special.
Yeah, it's really exquisite.
What about you, David? What are your hot takes?
Well, Marilyn, I was looking at the scheduling today and my notes, and you and I, we have podcasted many times before, and we don't do short podcasts.
Listeners, buckle in. Get your snacks now. You've been warned.
Right, but we do need to keep this one moving. So it's like at some point I have to cut myself off here because life is ever running. So anyway, I will get through as much as I can. First off, movies and TV shows are made in the editing rooms, and the editing on this was superb.
Yeah,
absolutely phenomenal. And my heart was racing between the party and the heist, and I, not knowing, and I was a complete sucker. The signals for Cinta's demise were all there. It was all laid out, and as I've done my rewatching, it's like, oh, yep, there it is. And I completely missed it. And so when it hit hard, and it was like, wow. But the editing, the way that they put everything together was fabulous. The intricate character-based storytelling is phenomenal. And I'm really loving this Bix Cassian, Cyril Dedra, and Vel Cinta. Goodbye, sweet Cinta. She was a gift. But we're looking at all of these couples and the circumstances that they're under within this rebellion. And as you were talking about community and heroes, this idea that a hero doesn't come from out of the sky. I mean, maybe in a supernatural based story, but otherwise our leadership and where we come from is the people that are around us. I mean, leadership matters. And I think I have this note somewhere else. Oh yeah, no, it's right here. That this story that Gilroy and his ensemble are telling, he's clearly always centering it back in. This is a story about rebellion. Yeah, we need a titular character to sort of follow and break through all the material, but it's really not just about Cassian.
Yeah.
And these human stories that are unfolding under this circumstance, history is not about, or history. I mean, complex word. You can describe, 50 years ago, this glacial, calved off and, it fell. Okay, that's a description, right? Yes, that's history, that happened. But when we tell the rest of history, it's about people. What actions did you take? What actions did they take? What actions did this nation take and decide to take? And so by centering this story of a galactic rebellion, that's a scale we cannot comprehend. Our brains just can't, barely have a hard time getting down the block, let alone across the other side of our own planet. And so the macro story is being not compressed, but we're living it through the point of views of these characters. And then he sets up these characters in these little pairings and relationships and individuals and all this kind of stuff. But it's superb storytelling because the character development and the development of the rebellion at a galactic scale are so beautifully intertwined, and you can cycle up and down that vertical scaling, and I never get disoriented.
Yeah. Well, as an historian, I will affirm that any honest historian will tell you that if you have 5 witnesses to an event, you will have at least 6 versions of it.
It's absolutely true. And then, as we know, who gets to set the narrative? Who gets to set the frame of the narrative?
The one who is in power.
Exactly. And it doesn't even have to be the winner, but it's the one who has power or voice or the ability to manipulate or to speak for. So
the whole first season of Andor was showing how Cassian went from being a thief to a rebel.
Yeah.
And it was from his community.
Yes.
Both his personal relationship with
100%.
Marva and then his community as a whole.
I even wrote a blog post about this on our website.
Sure did. Oh, and while I'm thinking of it, I hope that the people who wrote all those wonderful things that we're going to hear at the end on Discord will strongly consider running blog posts of them as well.
There is one up already. I've had such a hectic day that I have not had a chance to read it, but it was also one of those where like, hello, Discord post user person. This is profound. You should write it. Brian. And then I got Brian, who's our editor in chief. I'm like, you guys, get this article. Yeah, get this moved across. So it went up this morning, and I haven't had a chance yet.
Great.
Actually, I might even try to sort of look at it, get the title of it out of the corner of my eye here really fast. If you hang on for 1 second. It is What Makes a Rebellion Effective, Andor Season 2 by Cassian Luthen.
Wonderful.
And that is looking at the different rebellion factions in Andor. So,
very cool.
Lorehounds.com, just look for the link for the blog page on there. Mm-hmm. Couple of issues. One, there is the bury your gays trope. I myself am not gay, so I don't mean to speak for the gay community, but there is a trope of people who are out on, who are on screen, characters on screen who are out end up dying at a faster rate than other characters. The fact that Cinta died from the story, just from the broad story standpoint, great storytelling. And it's like, damn, did it have to be Cinta? Could it have been somebody else? So there's that. And then there's this whole question of Bix's arc and agency and stuff like that. And it's in an area that I'm really I need to sort of listen and pay attention because there's a lot going on that I just don't have any experience or point of view into. And I'm just we're so fortunate that we have people to talk through this stuff on the Discord. Well, but I wanted to flag those because in an otherwise almost perfect show, these are a couple of little things that are like, who's in the writer's room? Who is it? Just a bunch of dudes? They're doing a really good job, but you can see where there's some gappage in using tropes. Right, tropes themselves aren't bad, but they can be shortcuts to what you're getting to. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to try to remember to bring this up again when we're talking about the use of words.
Right.
And the power of who is the one who gets to name the words.
Got it. You mean like when Krennic said, words do have meaning.
They sure do. And how many meanings do they have?
Exactly. Yeah. And how do we take in those words? By touch? By visual? Yeah, there's all kinds. Yeah, great stuff.
By experience in our own bodies?
Yeah, for sure. I back to my hot takes. There's some beautiful cross-cutting themes, cross-episode themes that are going on in the show. Leadership, chain of command. You brought up this idea: go slow to go fast. Yeah. This is a what's the word I want to say? This is a phrase that's constantly used in the military or law enforcement or emergency response. When you're learning a new skill, you slow down to go fast. When you're rushing, you're making mistakes.
Yeah.
But when you slow down, especially when you're training, when you go slow, you can start to build the muscle memory and you can start to build, the patterns in your mind as you want to go. So I really loved that you picked up on that because I also picked up on it.
Well, even Gollum said, "Careful, precious. Less haste, more speed."
Right. Yeah. So it's not anything new. It's just not new to our modern context, but it's been around. Right.
Yeah.
Great parallels too with this whole question of eagerness. We have Cyril in the ISB. He's so eager and excited to participate and do something meaningful. And it's the same thing with the Ghorman front folks. Not only, you into the movable object that is Cassian, but, when Vel and Cinta are trying to train them as well, they're like, hey, we're big kids. We can do this. And clearly.
Well, many of them are, some of them aren't. I mean, the crucial question is, can you follow orders? Right.
And I think that's a really important thing because when we go back to the first 3 episodes, we have the Maya Pei Brigade. And when I talked to Matt Kavanaugh, who's a retired lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Army,
right?
He talked about how, when you take away the leadership cap, and you got a bunch of young hormonal individuals who are all amped up with $1 million worth of training and gear, they're crazy, right? But that's because they're in a military system, you're harnessing that energy, and pointing it at something.
Well, it's both the great strength and the great weakness of hierarchy.
Exactly, right. So, and then what I was going to say is with this eagerness, then we have an ultimate Chekhov's blaster. I don't think it was introduced in the first scene, but it certainly was. It was introduced, and the gun went off.
Yeah.
A couple of other big cross-cutting themes I saw. Strength of character, that was really something with that's been brought up a couple of times. Is Cassian strong enough to taste the pepper? When they were shopping in the bodega. And a couple of other scenes where people are talking about how is their character, are they up to the challenge, or do they have strength of character to face what needs to be faced? And then I just love, then this goes back to episode 4, where both the ISB and Axis, Luthen's group, they're just drowning in information.
Yeah.
And this idea of watching these organizations as they're struggling through rebellion and counter-rebellion. And I think what's happening with a lot of these bigger themes, they're very clearly being put into the language of the scripts and into the language that's on screen. And I really am excited to see what we get in the back half of the season for how these things are, these various different themes that are going to play out, specifically around leadership, around this eagerness, around chain of command, all of this kind of stuff. I think there's going to be some interesting things. I can't predict exactly what, but I feel like they're setting it up for the back half of the season. To that end, this idea that this whole thing, we'll get into it in a minute. Maybe I'll just save this for this conversation there, but Luthen and why he doesn't know why he's chasing Ghorman. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Because he's been outside of the Emperor's game, and that's allowed him to make moves.
Yeah.
But now he's playing the Emperor's game by not knowing why Ghorman is there. And that makes his position weaker as opposed to being outside. Because the thing about Sheev Palpatine is he is a master manipulator.
Sure.
And the game board is his. Luthen has been outside the game board to a degree. And so he's been able to manipulate and maneuver in ways that others can't. And there's an interesting dynamic there. Obviously, there's grief and trauma and stress abounds.
You don't say.
I really wish we had. I really wanted to cover episode 5 in part just for the Saw, the Willimon and Saw.
Incredible!
Oh,
devastating, and yet, believable.
Yeah, I mean when Willimon rages at the end there. Oh man,
yeah.
It's going to be dark. Whatever resolves is going to be dark.
I wondered how much of that was Willimon's rage and how much of it was the drugs talk.
Both, right? It's accelerant.
I think it
it's
had to have been. It had to have been.
And there's a lot of conversation around. Hate bringing up the Discord, but there's a lot of conversation about that right now about it.
Yeah.
And then lastly, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll get into the episode proper. The production values of the show are incredible.
Unbelievable.
The sets are beautiful. I loved the tech in Cyril's office, those green terminals and the beautiful Art Deco sort of designs and everything.
And so sterile.
And then each world and location has a unique look, so it really aids to the visual storytelling. So we know where we are. You don't even have to put the title card on the screen. It's white and sterile. Oh, that's Coruscant. That's ISB, as opposed to, Ghorman now. So really phenomenal. Obviously the acting is superb. The nuance, the subtlety, the face acting, just incredible. And then the cinematography. There is some stuff going on that is so subtle that it took me a while to cotton on to some of what's going on. One of the things that they're doing, and I need to go back and do a deeper dive. This may be one of my visual analyses. Okay. For the season pass and for regular subscribers. So season pass is a one-time $10 non-recurring charge. You get all the episodes ad-free. You get our season 1 coverage. And then you get all these bonus episodes like our Holocron lore drops, these side conversations that we're having with some other experts and people, and then some of my video analysis. I just did an analysis of the TIE Avenger, looking at the the systems and weapons, and speculating a little bit about it. But anyway, maybe I'll do this for my next video analysis. Is there's reflections everywhere.
Yes, you mentioned that in some of your posts.
Yeah.
So that'll be really fun to hear you talk about more.
I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why. It just is part of the visual language. Cinta and Vel behind a piece of glass, or we'll talk about it as we get to scenes, but there's some stuff.
Sure.
And then during the heist, there's a great little oneer, that where the camera doesn't cut for a whole sequence of stuff. And we'll talk about it when we're there.
I just wanted to add to your list of couples. I think we should add Mon and Perrin.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh, God, I can't believe.
Also add Luthen and Kayla.
Okay, Clea. Yeah,
Clea.
Mon and Perrin. Okay, I'm adding this in, and Luth. I think you're absolutely right. I was thinking more of the coupledom kind of thing, but it doesn't have to be the romantic entanglement. It certainly be about people who work together, or Mon and Perrin just almost have a business-like relationship to their marriage.
Yeah, but it's two people together.
Exactly. I love it. Thank you. Good eyes. I'm just noted that in my notes now. Okay. I got to uncheck and highlight that so that I remember to come back to it. So, do you have any other notes or thoughts for the season overall, or to the last 6 episodes?
No, I think listeners are probably ready for a break and looking forward to getting into the details.
Sounds good. When we get back, we'll start off with Cassian leaving Steerguard. And we're back. Quick reminder, if you've got feedback or you want to send in a blog post, StarWars@theLorehounds.com is how you get your transmissions to our fractal radio. I really want that radio setup that Clea has.
I know whenever they mention it, we see that radio set, I'm like, oh, David's going to be going crazy right now.
Absolutely. And again, you're welcome to join us on the Discord. That is a place for everyone to join and gather, our virtual water cooler. And there are links in the show notes for all of this, as well as the season pass. Quick notes about the episode. The writer for this block was Beau Willimon, who wrote...
explains to me why. I'm sorry, I cut in. An Arcana 5 arc.
Yes.
That explains to me why this arc has been so fabulous.
Yeah, he really nailed it. So, yeah. So, Beau Willimon, who wrote the Narkina 5 arc. The director is Ariel Kleinman, who also directed episodes 1 through 5. So,
ditto.
Consistency, visual consistency. So we'll see. Are we going to change up gears for the back half? That'll be interesting. Timeline is 3 BBY, so 3 years before the Battle of Yavin, which is the destruction of the first Death Star. And so overall, the episode weaves together these parallel operations: the Ghorman weapons heist and the high society infiltration, if you will, of Skulldun's party. And then we've got that third plot running on, which is Cassian and Bix. So let's start off with Luthen. Cassian boarding Luthen's ship at Port Steerguard in his Varian sky disguise. The exchange quickly turns tense as Cassian warns Luthen that the rebels aren't prepared for large-scale operations. Luthen dismisses his concern, seeing value in a dramatic and likely failed rebellion effort that would burn brightly and potentially inspire others. Clea and Luthen then talk, and we see Vel on Ghorman exchanging the code phrase with the underground. What did you think about this?
Well, I think I picked up on the code phrase the first time. When Cassian first delivered it in his role as Varian Sky. Boy, doesn't Cassian clean up beautifully?
Very nicely.
I'm telling you. Right down the streets of Manhattan. Yes, sir.
So in a previous episode when he was about to leave for Ghorman, when he went into that office at, in some sub-level, he delivers that passphrase to that couple before he gets that little earbug that gives him his backstory.
And I was confused at first. It's like, can he listen to this once and get it all into himself? But as somebody else on Discord pointed out, of course he's going to listen to it on loop.
Yeah.
all the while he's getting there. So,
but we even know that Cassian is of that caliber because when he's on Aldhani, he points out who's left-handed and right-handed when they're training for the thing. So he's that kind of guy.
For sure. For sure.
So, quick lore note, Steerguard is a location from where the Starpath unit was stolen. So that thing that Cassian had in the first series of episodes that got him and Luthen together, it was stolen from this planet.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not this port. Maybe there's an Imperial base somewhere else here, but it's all from Steerguard. And then Steerguard is mentioned several times when Dedra and Hirt are developing, who was Dedra's junior and now is a supervisor in his own right.
Right.
When they were developing their Axis investigation. So my big thought about this is this initial divergence between Cassian and Luthen. And there is this idea of accelerationism. Can I say that word? Accelerationism, which is a political strategy of deliberately making conditions worse to provoke the broader resistance and radicalize the population into rebellion. And Gilroy has been quoted in a couple of places. I got this from the Hollywood Reporter. You have to make it hurt really bad in order to bring people to change.
Which is fascinating to me because this is precisely what Dedra said to Pendergast.
Partagast.
Partagast, excuse me.
Yeah.
Too many names.
I know, it's a lot. And we're going at breakneck speed here, so yeah.
Yeah, Partagast.
Which season 1 or season 2 reference, or?
This is when she was called in for the first time to the big folks meeting.
Oh, right, yeah.
And wasn't saying anything. And then
when she says it to Krennic.
Krennic.
Yeah, Krennic
calls her over and says, look, I know you have a plot already. Tell me about it.
Right.
And so she says the best thing they could do is fail.
Right.
But be very, very violent and bloody and fiery in the failure.
Exactly. So this is accelerationism. And
so we're seeing it on both sides.
Yeah.
The Empire doesn't yet feel as though it has everybody behind it.
Right.
And the rebellion feels exactly the same way. So they're each trying to nudge people more into their own camps.
I've got an audio clip from this episode. I'm getting fancy this week. I actually got out my special software. Let's listen to this really quick.
You think you're small, you're thinking like a thief.
I'm thinking like a soldier.
Think like a leader. Think about a planet like Ghorman in rebellion. A planet of wealth and status.
If it goes up in flames,
it will burn very brightly.
So Cassian then says, count me out of this one. And so this is this difference between a soldier and a quote unquote leader, a kind of leader that Luthen's seeing. You were going to say.
Yeah, just that this encapsulates precisely the difference between these two people. They're both willing to do violence. They're both incredibly brave. They work in subterfuge, all these kinds of things. But Cassian's already seen his community burn in a sense, not literally. And he's just not ready for that level yet. I mean, he's been there. He's talked to these people. He's, seen them. And I think it's a lot harder to objectively say, yeah, let them burn if you've never looked them in the eyes.
Right. And there's two thoughts too. There's the whole, they've started too late, and then we get into that whole go slow to go fast and that eagerness to do something.
Yeah.
And Cassian, I think, is looking, he said, I'm a soldier. I'm thinking of this problem like a soldier. He wants to build a network. He wants to build a fighting force. He wants to build something that's going to have durability. Whereas where Luthen is more than willing to accept their eagerness and their wealth and their status and all of that to burn them. Like he burnt Krieger, the guy that they sacrificed in season 1. And Mon Mothma a couple of times has run across this with Luthen.
Oh,
when around the Aldani stuff, and then around Tay.
Mm-hmm.
And Luthen, and we go back to Luthen's monologue to Lonnie, that he's willing to use the tools of the tools of the master, right? Or I think that's a phrasing that comes out of the African American community in looking at chattel slavery. Is like, are we going to, is retribution going to come in the same forms and methods? And again, I have not studied this, so apologies if I'm using this wrong.
Audrey Lorde.
Thank you.
The tools of the master.
That's it.
Will never dismantle the master's house.
Right. But yet, here's Luthen using the tools of the master, right? He's willing to burn his soul and take all of the... he can take as much of it on as he wants, but it's going to hurt other people, and it's going to kill a lot of people.
Definitely. Absolutely. And what I find interesting is then he carries on, Luthen does, by inserting his two best operatives.
Right.
Which we'll talk about further down the line.
Right.
So
that's right.
I don't think either of them is hearing the other at this point, which doesn't surprise me particularly. On the same time, I found myself wondering, maybe I talk about this later, is Luthen trying to groom Cassian to be his successor?
I don't think so. That's an interesting thought, and I'm glad you brought it up, but I don't feel like that's going that way.
I don't think it will go that way.
Well, we know that it won't go that way.
Right. Well, we don't know what happens between now and then.
No, but we know what happens.
Like the final whatever.
Oh, a quick interjection too. I heard Tony Gilroy on another podcast, on the Script Writers podcast. I forget the exact name of it, but he talks about they are literally going to end the series in the frame, in the scene just before we first see Cassian on the rings of Kafrene in Rogue One.
Wow.
They're not, it's not a year from now he's going to be there. They're like, you can stop episode 12 of Andor season 2 and start Rogue One a beat later, and seamless.
Holy cow. It just seems to me that if Luthen is serious about wanting this to be a long-term project, he has to have some notion that if he gets taken out, by a bus, what's going to happen to his organization?
That's a good point.
And I think he may be thinking in those terms.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, he sees Cassian as a better possibility than Vel or Cinta.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We don't know the extent of his network, but if...
Yeah. I mean, we know that Luthen appreciates his tools. He has a very good sense of what they can and cannot do.
Right.
He's trying to nudge Cassian into regions that maybe Cassian himself is not willing to go into. Well, why is he doing that?
And it's interesting because Cassian was willing to have that authentic human moment with Naya on, in the test facility for the TIE Avenger, and say, we're together, you and me together. I'm going to get all emotional because he was recognizing her humanity.
Yes. And I think by now Luthen just knows he can't afford to do that.
Right.
And I still see that very first scene of the very first episode of this season and think, what happened between that and when Cassian first meets Jyn Erso? And is just not willing to go in the possibility of any kind of hope. I know that he says, people keep quoting it as Cassian who says rebellions are built on hope.
Jyn.
I thought it was Jyn who said that.
Yeah, it is in the council meeting.
Because Cassian, as we see him in the first part of Rogue One, does not strike me as having much hope.
And it's Jyn who rekindles his hope.
Precisely.
Yeah. And there's a moment, I was flying last week, and as I was flying out to my destination, Rogue One was on my seat back in the So I was posting on Blue Sky. I was like, oh my God, I have to take this picture and this picture. It was like a day. It was the day that Andor or that season 2 was dropping. And so I had this whole tweet storm about all this stuff. And there's very much, I think you're right, that something in Jyn reignites Cassian's Because he's at some point he's just sort of beaten down and he's just taking orders from this guy to do this thing that he's not comfortable with, and then he just doesn't do it. Yeah.
And I'm afraid I know what event it's going to be that might bring about this change in Cassian, but I don't want to.
No one is safe.
So forgive me for my lack of knowledge. Am I right that Gilroy was the one who was called in to kind of rescue Rogue One?
That is correct. Yeah.
So he is intimately familiar with it. So the fact that he can come right up to that absolute point.
It's incredible.
No surprise to me.
Yeah. And Diego Luna and Gilroy have been
also very
sketching
important.
out the broader outlines of this story.
Yeah.
We should get moving on here, but just really quick, I think you have this in your notes and mine. And I don't remember, I haven't finished Ian and Alicia's episode 5 coverage yet, but I didn't hear Jean and John talk about this, but Luthen is looking really, really haggard.
Yes, I'm beginning to think that the stress and strain of all these myriad of details is beginning to wear him down.
Yeah, 100%.
No human being can go on the kind of stuff that he's going on without respite, I think.
And with those highs and those lows.
Right. And sooner or later, you know what? The details begin to slip.
Mm-hmm. Which is why Clea is on him so intently.
And why they're so important as a pair.
She even says to him in season 1, "You're slipping."
Yes. Yes, she does. And now I think it's beginning to be visible. And praise to Skeller Skarsgård because, wow.
Yeah.
He is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and like we said, both the ISB and Access and the Access Network are flooded with information. There's so much going on where the ISB can scale up resources. It's Luthen and Clea, and with all this these disconnected cells spread around the universe.
And piles of data and no analysis. To help them. He doesn't seem to be cultivating data analysts.
No.
Or even research librarians. Imagine
that. Coming home, Cassian returns to the apartment where he and Bix reconnect. Things darken when Cassian learns Luthen visited Bix alone during his absence. Bix attempts to minimize the encounter while Cassian is increasingly agitated.
Oh, yeah.
So I love that, going from being on the floor of the apartment with the to-go boxes strewn about and watching really inane television to an immaculate, beautiful apartment, expensive flowers. Bix is a mechanic from Ferrix, and yet she's like, let's go for a walk. Let's go. The mission is dinner, right? Let's live not as rats, but as people who are upright and open-eyed. And what's the phrase? Eyes open and something bright. Eyes bright, wide. I forget what it is.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed?
No, it's
I didn't think so.
Like that. Yeah.
Well, what I want to say is what an incredible use of visuals to convey a change in character. I mean, it hit me in the face. I thought, is this the same place? Good heavens. What has happened to Bix? And it didn't occur to me that they're being sneaky and that we didn't hear Luthen's entire conversation with Bix. We just saw, the original scene, which I guess we'll get to. Or is this the time to talk about his visit to her too?
Well, it happened last episode, right? So we can talk about it.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
No,
the blur. Everybody's on Discord is like, oh wait, I'm in the wrong thread for the episode, and
seriously,
it's a blur.
No. My takeaway from that initially is that Luthen was suddenly very concerned about Bix, that she was using the drugs.
Yes.
Because I think that means that she might be less trustworthy.
And
yet, I think he carries on after that, and that's what other major event could it possibly have been that would lead to that switch in Bix?
Right.
From food containers on the floor to flowers on the table.
Right. It's her trying to get her own feet. Well, and that's the interesting thing about Luthen. Whenever he passes by, his gravity wave, right, is going to affect you. You can't not be affected by Luthen. And it was interesting as he was. We're talking about episode 6 today, but we sometimes we have to talk about the past. He's prowling around the apartment looking for these things, and when he finds the clue and he zeroes in on it,
right,
and my headcanon is when he says to her, well, yeah, you can take this stuff, but when you stop it, it's going to rebound on you.
Right.
He's speaking from experience.
I think so too. Absolutely.
And
personal experience. He might have seen it in other people too, but his own personal experience. There's nothing like personal experience to really be, integral.
The truth you discover for yourself is always more powerful than the truth that you're told or learn.
Precisely.
Yeah. Intellectually learn. And I think it's interesting. I think it's a very subtle and telling moment because Luthen, if he had been using it and now he stopped and he lived through the withdrawal, what peace did he make with his own self that he doesn't need that?
And what knowledge did he take away that gave him a better understanding of what Bix needs now?
Right.
A better understanding than Cassian.
Yep. Right. Because did you listen to John and Jean's conversation about episode? Yeah. And John brought up that beautiful thing about the scripts that men and women follow.
Yes.
And how when we're under stress and in grief, we go to these these cultural understandings that we've just downloaded.
These patterns.
Yeah. From the society at large. Yeah.
The scripts.
Yeah. We've just inherited them and without choice.
But we heard Bix already tell Cassian that she wants to fight.
Yeah.
And she wants to get out. And she wants to do and to be and all these other things. And obviously, all right, let me be clear. The suffering of the partner, while not the same way, can be equally as devastating to the partner.
Okay, say that again. Rephrase that for me.
Well, just that Cassian is seeing Bix suffer and he wants to fix it.
Right,
okay.
right.
That's a script.
Yeah, right.
To some degree.
Yep.
But that's his pain too.
And
it's important to remember that.
Yeah.
That at any coupledom where one has had trauma, they both are going to suffer.
Right.
Different ways.
Right.
But they both suffer.
Right.
And he's trying to do what he can to say, okay, I need to put that suffering out of my mind because I have a job to do right now. So I understand his responses. I don't think they're good ones. Luthen has the ability to be dispassionate enough about it all. Not to mention the experience of seeing it in other people to know this is actually what's needed. And don't worry about it. I'm going to get you some. And I think he might even have realized the best thing that could have happened for Bix is what happens at the end of the episode.
Right, right.
But I love that Cassian will be a partner in it.
Yeah. Well, when we get, we got to save it.
I've got a lot to say about that.
I have to say that I tried to go get the name pronunciation right on the internet, so I apologize if I get the syllables wrong. Adria Arjona, who is the actress who plays Bix, her, oh my God, her going from my lover is home, I just want to be with this person physically, to the I don't want to talk about what's happening with me mentally, to the let's have dinner, to the difficult conversation about the creepy guy who came by and you weren't here, and dealing with your partner's anger. Her ability to translate all of that in her face, in her body, just an exquisite performance.
It's absolutely stunning. And to be willing to go to those emotional levels. And I will say, as a woman, because of, again, those scripts and the feeling of vulnerability, I am in awe. I'm absolutely in awe.
I think that was all I had for this scene. Oh, I know there was one final note. The level of physical intimacy and passion that we're seeing on screen, in not just with Cassian and Bix, or when we were seeing a bunch with them, for a Disney show and a Star Wars show, this is really the Star Wars of a different category, right? I'm not going to put anything above or below or anything else. This is just, it really is this other world. And to see two people holding each other and caressing and showing this open affection and intimacy in our Star Wars storytelling it's wow. It's really wow.
And to see two women in
we're going to get there.
Potent sexual relationship. But what I loved so much about the farewell scene between Cassian and Bix before he goes off to Ghorman. It was physical. It was sensual. The love conveyed was almost overwhelming. And it was not you didn't have to show body parts.
Right, exactly.
It was not HBO. You didn't need that. Every single message that might be conveyed with an openly sexual scene was conveyed there. And it almost broke my heart. It was just beautiful.
And I even loved the playful, like, well, maybe I'll bring Varian Sky home one day and we'll have some fun with that guy.
Absolutely.
And, it was so great.
Absolutely.
Because she's probably never seen, have they ever gone out and, dressed up and had the fun of wearing clothes and stylizing yourself in a way that is outside of your normal, right?
Not likely on Ferrex at any rate.
Yeah.
And since then, they really haven't had a lot of time to expand their wardrobes much.
No.
Just saying. They don't have Doctor Who's closet.
No, they don't. They don't have a TARDIS closet. A year's worth of insincerity. Mon and Perrin ride in the car, making the rounds for some of the investiture banquets or planning their investiture banquet strategy that they have to attend, noting that it took Mon years in office before hosting her first ceremonial dinner. And I just love this line from Perrin. It's tough squeezing a whole year's worth of insincerity into 3 minutes.
Yeah, no kidding.
So good.
But it's interesting how much more comradely they seem.
Yeah, I was gonna mark that as well. They're both in the first 3 episodes around the wedding, and then now in through this. Well, we don't really. This is really their episode here. Their working relationship, air quotes.
Exactly. Their body language when they're in the car together.
Yeah. On
the way to whatever party or ceremony, whatever it was. Radically different.
Yeah.
From most of season 1.
A couple of other notes, and then I want to do something on the camera work, which to talk about the camera work. Obviously, this is a setup and transition, a little bit of exposition, but it's still got a lot of protein in it, as Tony Gilroy might say. I noted that Cloris is still their driver, the ISB informant. And I thought it was interesting to pick up on what you were just saying about their relationship and the functionalness of their relationship, because she was open. It was like open disdain in season 1.
Exactly.
Is that she relies on Perrin to be the social butterfly when they're going around to all of these things, and she's not only she's relying on him. For sure. He takes the attention. Yeah. So that she can be looking into other things. Exactly. And interesting too, he's almost like the social director, and she's the source of power. Yes. Yep. And I only just twigged to the fact that she kept her family name. And he kept his family name. Now, I know nothing about marriage customs. Right. Chandrila marriage customs. Chandrila. Yeah. But Chandrila. Oh, now we're in trouble. Moving on. We'll move on. You say one, I say the other. Right, I know. Tomato. The internet gets a bee in their bonnet about pronunciations. So. I'm sure they do. I've been known to tut at certain words in Quenya and Sindar. Right. So hey. You want to get serious? Let's get we'll get into the Tolkien pronunciations. All right. So yeah, but it's really interesting. And when we talk about the setup of all these couples or these pairings of people, how relationships works, and I think that's one of the things that's so authentic about this is that I've been married for just over 10 years now. Congratulations! We just had our 10-year anniversary, and you develop. Oh, that's your thing. That's my thing, right? I can't handle this right now. You usually handle this. Can you please? You create these lanes, so to speak. Or, for your social engagements, where you rely on each other. And even in Clea and Luthen, rely on each other for these different aspects. Definitely. And I suspect, because I've never been in a long-term marriage, or in any marriage, that those things get renegotiated over time. They explicitly and implicitly. Yeah. You start off one way, but then conditions change, people change, whatever. Yep. So, but it's that notion of, as a couple, we don't have to both handle everything. Exactly. And, so we've had some things come up in our family life where okay, I said to my wife, I'm going to handle this, right? I will take the lead on this. I feel comfortable doing this. Sure. But then we might be in the kitchen and I'll open the dishwasher and put a couple of things away. And then I get pulled off, whatever. I'm listening to a podcast and I have to run to the Discord because I have a comment about something that somebody said on the podcast.
I need to do that too. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
And then I come back and my wife is, continuing on the dishes, and there's no animosity like, oh, why are you,
Yeah.
You flow, right? You flow.
The best relationships too, just like Tom Bombadil and Goldberry.
There you go. So speaking of flowing, and last note before flowing camera work, Mon does I don't know if you noticed, she does the thing where she unlayers.
Oh, yeah.
And that's definitely a deliberate choice, apparently. I think I heard Alicia talk about this, that the costumers deliberately layer Mon Mothma's clothing so she can do this thing where she's like, and it adds to our visual storytelling.
Yes. But I also think there may be some sort of a social thing involved too.
100%. Yeah.
You don't want to have exactly the same look at all 10 of the parties you're going to tonight.
Correct. Yeah.
Because heavens, what a faux pas that would be.
Okay, check this camera work on this scene. Like, it was crazy. So we start out this scene with the car in as a reflection of a building that it's passing by. And the camera position is roughly on the front left corner. And it's riding with the car at the same velocity of the car. And we don't see any of the car in the shot. We see the reflection of the build. And we see the car in the reflection. Then the camera pivots and looks back towards down the length of the car as we come to the end of the building. So the reflection is just as the reflection on the side of the building goes away, the camera pivots. We see Cloris, the driver. And then the camera detaches itself from the car and starts to slow down. So the velocity of the car starts to overtake the camera. So the camera is the car catching up to and passing the camera is what's causing the relative motion between the camera and the car. So, we got it's kind of like a dolly shot that way. And then just as we come up to Perrin and Mon Mothma, we freeze for half a second and we see into the car and we see them. Then we cut to a bunch of back and forth interior shots as they're, having their conversations. And then when the scene is over, we're on the other side of the car, on the outside of the window. And then the camera slows its relative velocity. The car continues and pulls away, passes, and then drops off. So we're constantly in motion in this scene, and we're using reflection. We're looking through windows. We're up close with people, and then the car pulls. So they're using the relative position and velocities of the camera and the car against each other to create this feeling of motion within the scene.
You've got such an eye, David.
I'm not a trained cinematographer or anything like that, right? This is just me watching it 3 times. So,
well, you're a profoundly gifted amateur, then.
It's incredible when you start to pick up on. I have to go. I'm going to have to go back and I think this is this kind of show where I'm going to be rewatching this every couple of years, and there's going to be new layers. So
they've gone a long way from Bogey and Bacall sitting in front of a driving wheel with the behind the scenes scrolling across the.
But if you rewatch this episode, definitely watch that scene again and pay attention to how that works. So, do you need any other notes for this?
Well, I felt that Clea was a little bit too obviously on a mission.
Clea, there's no Clea here. This is just Mon and Perrin. So I think your note might have.
Oh, I might be jumping ahead then.
Yeah.
Okay, my apologies. I'll hold that for later.
No problem. Well, let's do this. Let's take a really quick break, and then when we come back, we'll pick up where Cassian confronts Luthen. And we are back. Cassian shows up at Luthen's shop unannounced and demanding explanations for why Luthen visited Bix. Luthen berates Cassian for breaking protocol, and Cassian grows upset over the fact that Luthen he's perceiving Luthen as jeopardizing Bix's well-being. Luthen shifts the blame, expressing disappointment in both of them, and reminding Cassian that the cause must always come first. Cassian's ultimatum: he and Bix are a package deal, and Luthen needs to help with getting Bix back into the fight if he wants Cassian to. Cassian? Boy, I'm really
say this 3 times fast, David.
Exactly. If he wants Cassian to stick in the fight.
So I'm a little confused. Have we already seen Bix with the flowers on the table?
Yes, this was before that. Yep.
No, we hadn't seen it.
Well, this is in order. These scenes are in order of the episode.
Okay.
So Cassian and Bix have already had their reunion and had the flowers on the table.
Okay, so in that case, Luthen is doing a certain amount of withholding.
Yeah, and Cassian calls him out for that.
Yeah, but also, in a sense, Cassian is telling him what he already knows, which we'll see. Especially the whole Bix and I are package deals.
Right.
I think, as so often is the case, Luthen is already 3 steps ahead of him on that one.
And the thing is, Cassian and Luthen. There's another couple for you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I almost merged their 2 names in my head as I was trying to say the words Luthian. When this divergence in terms of strategy, right. and I'm willing to sacrifice the Ghormans, and I'm not. Are you willing to sacrifice Bix? No, I need Bix as much as I need you. Not only because you are a pack, not only because she helps you and you help her, and you're both. It's interesting. Oh, I just thought of this too. Cinta tells Vel later that we're worth more to Luthen separate than we are as together. Oh,
yeah. And I just thought of something too. Luthen has been working with Bix a lot longer than he's been working with Cassian.
That's very true. That's true. He's met her, I forget what Dedra says, but yeah, multiple times. Yeah.
Yes. And we see her calling
That's
him
a really good point.
in the first season and so on. So,
and
how easy it is to forget.
And Luthen's a treasure hunter, right? And so he's relying on Bix for her technical skill. Well, I mean, he came to get her to do a weapons appraisal, right? So he trusts her ability to, as an analyst and as an expert in her field.
Right. So he may have a better sense of Bix's character than Cassian does. I know they dated in the first season. Yeah, the sense was they had dated for a while and then split up.
Yeah. And there's that great scene where he comes back and he says, "Oh, do you remember when I jumped over this wall and your dad yelled at me and stuff?" And like they were teenagers and it was so evocative.
So, in that interval, I think Luthen got to know Bix in her more grown-up years.
That's a really good observation. I like that. He's seen her and trusted her. He's been developing her long before Cat. Yeah, that's really good.
And this is the beauty of these kinds of conversations. It never occurred to me before.
Exactly. And then just the way that Luthen is back to sass talking Cassian. Kill me or take me in. Oh, I was like, oh damn, he pulled that one out and like threw it right in his face. It was harsh.
But see, this is the thing. It's no longer Cassian alone.
Yeah.
Because remember at the end of the first season, he ships Bix away.
Yes. Right. He
saves and figures she's going to, be safe in the fields of whatever it was.
Right.
And suddenly she got brought right back.
And both Will and Bix are brought into the fight.
Both Will and Bix.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good point.
And of course, Brasso is now.
Brasso.
R.I.P.
I love Brasso so much.
Yeah.
And then again, we're seeing these themes of leadership and character strength that I mentioned before. We're seeing that in here. Just a couple of weird, quick plot points. Obviously, Luthen is living above the shop or in the back of the shop.
He must be.
Because Clea says to him, like, "Oh, you're up early," and he's walking out. And so,
Right. And apparently Cassian knows that.
Yeah.
Or maybe he doesn't. He's just starting there because
it's a couple of years now that they've been working together. So, yeah.
Fair point. Yeah. He probably does know that.
Quick couple of lore notes. Both, I believe Alicia hunted high and low, and I did as well. The Darvian medallion that Cassian or Luthen, uses as a prop, is that Cassian refuses to take with him, leaves. there's no known Star Wars canon lore connection. It seems like a wholly made up thing for this episode. And then several people on the internet, the Discord, caught the scene. They really linger on one of the items in Luthen's shops, which are these big, weird gloves.
They're gauntlets with claws. And I noticed that too, that we were given a nice shot of them. And I thought, okay, when are these going to appear again?
And is it relative to the conversation? Is it like some sort of visual metaphor for what's happening between, that they got their claws out for each other? But then something weird happened on my I was looking at some Instagram reels because it's my one little, that's like eating chips or candy or something. I'll look at Instagram reels. There they were. There was a post about these are a Persian gloves. They're a historical thing. It was wild. So again, Providence, the Force. I don't know.
Could they be from old Earth?
I don't. Yeah,
except that's the wrong galaxy, so they probably are not.
I'm not going to get into the world building stuff. I'm going to get in trouble. No. I do. All right, Dr. Gorst, Major Partagaz pigeonholes Young and Hirt. He informs them that military intelligence has convinced the Emperor to expand Dr. Gorst's techniques into a whole program that's going to be housed in a naval facility there on Coruscant. Partagaz assigns Young and Hirt to represent ISB's interests. So we got this great little pull aside here, and then there was a whole bunch of conversation around this as well. This is where Lonnie gets the intel that he does. Everybody's pretty sure that he feeds to Luthen, who then feeds to Bix and Cassian.
Yeah, I think it's very, very obscure, but I think that's the logical chain that we can assume.
And this is something that I think Gilroy and his writer's room, the writers of this, are very... and I heard this interview with him, and it was very interesting talking about some of their process and some of the tricks of circumstance and timing with the COVID and then the strikes and how they went about stuff. But he is very clear about when to put something on the page and put not something on the page.
Yeah.
And part of that is how he is relating to us as the audience and not infantilizing us with over exposition.
Sure, and it's much more gratifying to say, hey, I figured that one out.
Exactly.
You didn't even have to tell me.
Exactly.
Not that I did. Other people had to tell me, but I don't care.
Yeah, well, that's why we have that's why we have a Discord and a podcast.
That's why we have a community.
Exactly. But I did love how even though Lonnie was using, so I think Lonnie is doing two things. One, he doesn't want the extra work.
Oh, no.
So he's bracing here to deal with it, right? Like, oh, you're junior. You're taking this one. I got too much else I'm dealing. But at the same time, he sets up Hirt for taking the fall when Gorst is eventually assassinated.
Yeah, I hadn't tweaked to that, but it makes a lot of sense.
And
because how many people knew about it in advance? So there's only so many holes that plug. Exactly.
And he's the junior guy, and he's calibrate your enthusiasm.
Oh, that was such a magnificent line. So much nicer than curve it.
Yes.
much more technologically stated.
There was a line, I think it was in episode 4, where Partagaz is talking about a buffet of rebel activity. And I was just like, oh, I'm so in love with the way that they're writing Partagaz.
The use of language is delightful.
He's so good.
But yeah, I mean, this may be, Luthen keeps pushing Lonnie for more intel.
Right.
This may be the time when he pushed too hard and Lonnie reached too far.
Well, and it's a good thing that Lonnie put somebody else in front of him. He was like, yeah, we were both assigned to it, but I didn't, you can see the logs here. I don't have reports. I'm not, I'm the senior and I'm supervising the junior, but, hey, this junior guy, I don't know.
So you think that maybe Lonnie will take the fall?
Here we'll take the fall.
Young? Here we'll take the fall.
Yeah, Lonnie Young is his name. Yeah. Is the other guy's name. So yeah, I think he distances himself far enough from it.
Sure.
If he does take any heat, he's not going to get executed for it.
he's going to be slapped on the wrist for not managing his
junior
second in command.
Yeah,
there.
Exactly. And then again, we have that enthusiasm with Hirt as well. Counterpointing the Ghorman front enthusiasm for wanting to do stuff. So we've got a lot of eager and Cyril as well. We have a lot of eager and excited people who want to get into it.
Right. Well, again, each side is dealing with very similar dynamic.
Right. All right. Comrade in Arms, Vel and Cinta are reunited and confirm details of the Ghorman operation. And then Partagaz confers with Miro about developments on Ghorman, and he reminds her that she needs to compartmentalize her relationship and her job. So many words. So let's talk about Vel and Cinta in this cafe that's right out of Milan, right out of Prague, Budapest, Vienna. I've been to cafes that I felt like I was like, wait, wasn't I there? I thought I was there. That looks really familiar.
I was waiting for the strolling violinist.
Yeah, right. It was just such a beautiful set that they've built for Ghorman. And then I know that there's been some talk about languages on the previous podcast to us.
Yes.
The thing that caught me was, so I was doing that whole thing like, oh, that's German. Oh, that's French. But I was also like, oh, that's Yiddish. I heard some what sounded like to me Yiddish words, which then if you look at textiles and certain things that Jewish communities of that area and time of Europe were involved in, and Yiddish has relations to Germanic languages.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
same roots. No, again, call back to the Resistance à Lyon.
Yeah,
a lot of what they did was to help Jewish residents escape.
Right, and then we have the story. Well, and then the formation of the State of Israel and all that. And I definitely do not want to go into that complex topic. But it just made me think that this, Gilroy is such a voracious reader from what I've heard on interviews with him.
Makes sense.
That he's been reading history from, Russia to North Africa, from, England, from, I don't know, I'm sure he's around American history, to Far East,
Oh, clearly.
And you could clearly see that heavy European influence of that World War II to World War I to II time spanning of the industrial age and the all of the machinations that were going on.
With a dash of cabaret.
Yes.
Willkommen.
So,
bienvenue.
Varda Sethu and Faye Marseille, the two actors who play Cinta and Vel, the face acting.
Yeah, heartbreakingly beautiful.
Their emotions, like the declaration, like, well, to be honest, I didn't want to come on this mission without you. Really? Yeah. I said the same thing to Luthen, and man. And I was
guess it's a dangerous thing to say in the TV world, in the film world.
We haven't seen you. You come back. You express your undying love. You're dying.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see it coming either.
I totally missed it.
Yeah.
I was just so happy to see them. I was just so happy to see
a reconciliation.
Yeah, and that it was so interesting that Cinta. She says to Vel later, which is wrapped up in the montage scene, the way that I've broken up the episode, that forget what I was going to say. Anyway, the point being that I know what it was. You Vel know how to change yourself. You know how to adapt yourself when you run into these things. I don't know how to do that. And so I was stuck in this one way of being, which was for the cause and nothing else.
Right.
And then when she stops and has to, the point that she had to take a time to rest is really, really critical to Cinta's development because she stopped moving. Near-death
experiences will do that to you.
And she had time to reflect. And it wasn't next mission. She wasn't carrying that operational tempo. You hear military folks talk about this, maintaining this operational tempo. And when you come off that tempo, you have some downtime. You have to build back up to that tempo so that you're at your peak of lethality. Because you need to be, it's just like being at a busy pizza restaurant on Friday night, right? When you're on and you can get everything done. And so when she stops and she starts to reflect on her life and her choices and actually examine her feelings.
Right.
And
well, again, a case of going slow to go fast.
Yeah, that's a really good, I didn't think about that using that interpretation.
Yeah.
So what's your headcanon on Tay and Cinta and the whole?
I was still I've only seen it once. So I was just taking stuff in, on a very fundamental level, but reading again, people's suggestions later, I think this is absolutely brilliant. Another one of those examples of Ghorman saying, you don't need to see this. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, right. The negative space between
because
scenes.
We saw her in the car with Tay. We know that Tay was killed, and it makes perfect sense that you got to make it look like an accident. And in the process, she got injured.
Yeah, exactly. Something went awry. Yeah, as it does, as things always do. A couple of final notes for me. The background music. There's a piano, so soulful, it's perfect. I've heard cello and some other back. So I really want to talk to Mark and Nicole about what's going on.
That will be fun. Yeah. That will be good to hear.
There's some great use of background music. And then for a lot of the scene, not every camera shot in the scene, but a lot of the scene, they're behind glass and we're seeing people passing in front of them in reflection.
Yeah.
And then what happens? Next scene, we see Dedra in the reflection of the console. And the camera moves along the surface of the reflection, and then the door opens, and it's very jarring. But it's just again visually beautiful, and there's a visual language that is definitely established in this block. I can't remember if it's in the first three or not, and I'll just have to watch the whole season over again.
And then with your note, Partagaz gently brings her down to earth.
Yes.
Say more on that.
So she was looking I interpreted that she was looking quite pleased with herself.
Always a dangerous thing to do if Partagaz is your
and that yes, that her guy Cyril is being successful with all of this, and rather than he doesn't rebuke her, he doesn't praise her or anything like that. He actually has, for the head of the ISB, the operational head of the ISB. Very bad outfit, right? He has this amazingly human relationship with Dedra. He's taken her under his wing. He's shepherded her. He looks out after her for her best interests.
And for his best interests.
Of course.
I mean, if you're going to be an ISB, I think you have to have an understanding of human nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe he had a daughter somewhere or whatever. That certainly could be. But I think he's about as protective as a cobra. To be perfectly honest, he's again very much like Luthen. He's wanting to get the best he can out of his tools.
Yes, yeah,
and he sees in her a potential for greatness.
Yeah,
and anytime he sees her wavering from that, he brings her back.
Yeah, which is why I said he brings her back down. Right?
Sometimes gently, and sometimes not so
with
much.
A little shock. Sometimes you need to be shocked a little bit.
Exactly.
He even says to her in season 1. Which scene was it? But he basically says, he says to her something about a career that is destined for greatness.
Yeah.
And it was like in one of the open meetings, like he was like, for somebody who has the potential to have an extraordinary career, your answer here is very mundane or something. I forget what the setup was, but
the very first comment he gives to her from that very first meeting when she gets promoted, as they're walking down the corridor afterwards, is watch your back. Now, does she have to watch her back from everybody else or even possibly from him?
Eventually. Yeah. Eventually. It's to everybody. Yeah. Trust no one. Right.
I mean, it's not stated in so many words, but I think she gets a very clear message of either I succeed or I'm done.
Mm-hmm. And everybody is surprised. All of her coworkers are surprised that she has not been drummed out of the service following Ferrex.
Yes, although there is some conversation that, the next thing she's told to do seems to be a demotion.
Right.
When in fact, it's just the opposite.
Right.
So.
Exactly. And it's interesting, though, I was sort of reflecting on that. Ferrex was not her fault.
No, but she was the top official there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Doesn't matter what was going on. It was your authority. It was your command.
Exactly.
It was your show.
Exactly. Well, let's take another quick break, and then we're going to get into the Ghorman heist, Sculdun's party, and Bix's revenge.
Buckle up, everybody. It's going to get rough.
And we're back. So let's talk about first the Ghorman heist, then Sculdun's party, and then Bix's revenge. And then we have 3 pieces of feedback, excellent feedback that we've got. So we've got to balance both depth and time here so that we we don't break the 3-hour mark.
Well, you may have tempted the
fates. I know. Whenever we do
from
that.
high top.
All right, carrying on here. And now, my cat is eating my hand, because I'm, stop.
Paying attention to something the size of the cat.
So, montage.
Aha.
Vel and Cinta, it's a funny thing to do in television, is to have a montage. I think there was a Simpsons episode about montages when they made a musical out of montages, if I remember right. Vel and Cinta coordinate with the Ghorman resistance, the Ghorman front, on their plan to expose Imperial operations. Vel immediately establishes a strict chain of... Sorry, my cat is attacking my pencil collection here. Vel immediately establishes a strict chain of command, asserting that they alone will have blasters and setting a firm 6-minute timeline for the operation. The local rebels display a dangerous mix of eagerness and experience. After the planning, Vel and Cinta share an intimate moment. During the execution of the plan, all being observed by Cyril and being relayed to ISB headquarters, they successfully disable an Imperial transport and load the weapons according to plan. Everything collapses when an unexpected civilian appears. Actually, 2 civilians appear. Sam draws a blaster, and in the ensuing fight, Cinta is shot and killed. Vel, devastated, has to be pulled away and later confronts Sam. That's Sam with 2 M's, mind you, delivering a blistering monologue. Okay, I want to get the cinematography stuff out of the way really quick, right at the top.
Go.
First off, the camera work. When we're in the training montage, there's a little scene that opens it. The camera is pulling backwards and giving us a view of the little sand table that they've set up, to explain everything. And then when we cut scenes to the street, the camera reverses direction and pushes forward. At the same time, the transports are moving opposite in the opposite direction as the camera. So we get this great sense of motion again, pushing and pulling through these scenes. It's really good. And then the other, I wanted to point out the oneer. That is a single uncut shot visually.
Right.
And whether you do that in post or whether you do that in real is always a debate. It's the difference between live music and, studio music, I guess you could say. But there's a great oneer of when they're unloading the cargo from the transport, the very first cargo container that comes off, the camera flies in perpendicular to the back of the transport and follows the container as it's pulled off the truck and landed on the ground. They open that one up really quick to check the contents, close it up, and then send it sliding down the stairs where it lands in the mud puddle, is then picked up and put on the back of the truck. And that is all one shot with the camera sort of hovering up and behind that piece of cargo container as it makes its journey there.
Wow.
Perfect.
Wow. And again, I found myself thinking of hidden passageways.
Yes.
In Lyon.
Yeah, right. I thought of the Seine, at least the quays along the river there, where you have the street on one level and then you have sort of a pedestrian level down below.
Yeah.
So, right. What are your thoughts on the heist overall?
Which one? There were 3.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Ghorman heist. No.
Yeah, the Ghorman heist. The overall, everything from the training montage through everything's on the table. Training montage, Vel and Cinta, and the actual heist itself.
Well, I mean, it certainly shows the challenges when you're trying to pull together a rebellion of any kind.
Right.
It also does an excellent job of highlighting the difference between committed operatives and beginners. That in the end, they don't even have the same motives entirely. You know, these operatives are just wanting to expose what the Empire is doing and then expecting that there will be an uproar throughout the galaxy and the Empire will be brought to heel and so on and so on. Vel and Cinta intend to upend the social orders. And, you know, you have to ask the question, so why did Luthen feel it was worthwhile to send them there? From the beginning, I think he really wants a train wreck.
Right.
As does Dedra. So this is oil and water. And I'm sort of uncertain as to how successful the Ghorman group feels that they were. I know how Vel felt about it.
Right.
And we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'll be very interested. I don't know if we ever come back to Ghorman or we just hear about, you know, consequent actions and whatever. You know, how will it have changed the Ghorman people?
Right.
How will it have changed Vel?
This is, I'm thinking of Aldani and how it was called an announcement. Like that's what the episode was called. Announcement.
Right. And, you know, that kind of thing up to this point, this group has been able to accomplish. But it was almost exclusively reliant upon themselves with the addition of 1 or 2 locals, you know, that one Imperial officer who fell in love with an Aldani woman and said, okay, yeah, I'm in. Again, showing there have to be strong personal motivation.
Right.
To be absolutely willing. And they expected a level of trust and obedience that I think was a little naive in them expecting it.
Right.
Particularly with these raw recruits. Cassian saw it from the very beginning and said, you know, no, they're not ready.
Right.
This is going to be, you know, a bloodbath. And interestingly enough, it wasn't a bloodbath in the sense of, at least yet, you know, hundreds killed, but it took out one of Luthen's best operatives. So it was a bloodbath because if you look at the percentages, how many people does Luthen have?
And it goes back to what, you know, the point that you've picked up on quite early, which is, you know, go slow to go fast.
Right.
They went fast and somebody died.
Right. And not, you know, the intended, you know, if they're deaths, they're going to be, you know, indigenous, as it were.
Right. It wasn't one of the operatives, the highly trained operatives who was sent.
God forgive us, you know. To view any human being as expendable is a really pretty horrible thing. But
I'm taken back to that conversation that I had with Matt Cavanaugh about this, and he referenced James Wozniak's article in the New York Times about the brick in the wall rebellion, one brick at a time, and Matt had talked about how you've got to agree to be. You got to agree. Strategy is like, okay, we both agree that this is an objective, and then we have to understand and agree on the cost of achieving that objective.
And I'm not even sure they were agreeing on objectives.
That's what Cassian was like. This is a mess. I am not a part of this.
Yeah. So why did Luthen push it? I mean, I think he's hoping that by pushing and pushing, there will be the kind of
accelerationism. Yeah.
Acceleration and explosion that he's looking for.
Yep. Because they need to, I think they're on the precipice of, they've got too much information. They've got too many operations. There's too much going on. And we've got to actually take it to the next level now.
Luthen didn't read the room. he sent Cassian to read the room.
Yes.
Cassian came back and said, "This is what I see."
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what Luthen wanted to hear.
Nope.
So he sent out 2 others who he knew
would do the job,
would follow the strict chain of command.
Very good. Very good.
And do what they were told to do.
Yeah. Even though Vel continually says, if we don't like it, we can step back. But they never ran into a serious enough problem to trigger their concern.
Until they ran into it.
Yeah, until they ran into it.
And I just have to wonder from all this experience, how firm are the bricks of Ghorman going to be after this?
Right. And that's, I think, again, Cassian's assessment is that they're not hard enough of a people.
No, they're not. Not so much that they don't have the capacity.
Right.
But they're still hoping for reconciliation. That is their bottom line. And I do not blame them.
Right.
They don't know yet.
We want weapons to protect ourselves. That is a passive stance.
And even before that, we want the world to see what this is really about. And of course, it's not really about this at all.
Right.
It's about something that nobody has
foreseen.
The
ISB is running a shadow government. No. It's
about the destruction of a planet.
Yeah.
And that is just so many miles outside
nobody
of
has seen
calculation
that.
At this point.
Yeah.
Nobody has seen that because who could possibly tell them that?
So I'm
Dedra and Krennic and probably
Partagas, yeah. I've got like 3-4 notes going on here on the piece of paper. I'm thinking of Kenari, and when Cassian as a young boy, when Casa as a young boy, and we see that big pit mine that they dug out on Kenari, whatever they did to Kenari to cause sort of a ecological whatever.
Good catch.
And then, of course, we have Narkina 5, right, where they,
seriously,
Freedy and I forget the other guy's name, talk about how the Empire is, poisoned everything, and so there's no good fishing or anything like that. I'm thinking about the Saw's line about Rhydonium, where the friction, when there's too much friction in the air, we're the thing that explodes. And I think, oh God, yeah, I'm getting this on a new level too, episode 5. And, Luthen is looking for that spark to ignite. There's a Rhydonium is throughout the galaxy right now, right? There is a, not Rhydonium itself. I'm using the metaphor of Rhydonium.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And he needs that spark and that thing that's going to burn and burn brightly. That's going to cause the chain reaction of all of the other places.
Sure. And the thing is, why did he think that he could find that spark in one of the richest and most comfortable cultures in the galaxy?
Do you have a thought?
The more you have to lose, the less you're likely to become involved.
And if you can see, if I'm on a I'm on a middle class planet, and the high status folks are getting it.
Yeah.
If they're getting it, I know I'm getting it.
Sure, but he can't do it that way. You can't start at that top. Any power over authority knows that the most dangerous person to their authority is the one who has nothing to lose.
That's a really
Ghormans
good point.
have everything to lose. And they're just not there yet. And that's what Cassian tried to tell Luthen.
Yeah.
And Luthen did not want to hear it.
Right.
He had his own ideas. He's getting frantic, I think, because he knows there are big things happening. He doesn't know what they are, but he's desperately scrambling to try and figure this out. He's no longer in command and in control.
You're pretty good at co-pilot. You know that?
Oh, bless you. You are an inspiring conversationalist, David. Come on. And the depth and the richness of what we're talking about.
Right.
It just keeps, producing stuff.
It does, right? It's inspiring. I know when I'm inspired by a show is because like blog posts and video analyses and side conversations start just sparking off of me. And completely. Like if I could do nothing, the irony is right now in my life, it's like super busy. And I'm like, come on, man, can I catch a break and just focus on Andor for 4 weeks?
Well, sometimes what that means is you don't spend any peripheral time, doom scrolling.
No, I'm at an operational tempo at a very high order.
Exactly.
I'm a very high order.
And I thank you and all three of the squadron leaders for doing that.
John's idea initially, and it was like, oh, we got that. It was like, oh, it was a game changer for all of us.
Brilliant.
And when somebody drops that one little thing and then it just everything underneath that you've been struggling with suddenly reorders and reorients, and you're like, yeah, this is true. This is a kind of truth. Right. And I think that's what that Luthen is also looking for is, that thing that's going to set these dominoes in motion.
But he has to listen to his people.
Yeah. Right.
Because you can't want it so much that you think, oh, well, I'll just give an extra nudge.
Yeah.
You've got to be willing to hear the actual situation on the ground.
Yeah.
Why else did you send Cassian in the first place?
Right. And he even says to Clea, this isn't, this piece that we're looking at, it's garbage, it's no good, and you already have other operatives, and like he even had doubts about Cassian's report even before because he wanted it so much that it didn't matter what Cassian said. It didn't matter how many pages of a report that Cassian wrote.
Exactly.
Luthen was looking for a single answer, and when he did not get that answer inside of that box,
he sent two other people, some of his best people, to get the answer he wanted, and he lost one of them.
So let's talk a little bit about the heist aspect there. I thought it was really interesting that the guy who gets into the scuffle with Sam is the guy from the meeting.
Yes.
Where they do that. I want to know the backstory of that hand on forearm little thing that they do, and that was so beautiful.
It's kind of like a raised fist.
Yeah.
Or a V sign, or any that embodiment of your commitment.
The whoever designed that, and then the open heart thing, like I touched at my sternum and then I open my palm.
Yes, I love that.
Oh, like all the attention to cultural detail. These feel like natural, honest movements that you could see would be developed, not some weird, strange twisting, dancing motion of something that. No, human motion and oftentimes is efficient and boiled down to its bare essential.
And now you're making me realize that Luthen approached the wrong people on Ghorman. He shouldn't approach the open-hearted ones. He should have approached the ones who signaled with their fist.
Oh, check you out. I like that.
Well, I'm a symbolic thinker.
Yeah.
And so you gave it to me, and I just gave it right back.
So then he carries Cinta, right? He's the one who carries Cinta, and he's sympathetic to what to what's going. He's anti-imperial.
Exactly.
And so he feels bad, and he gets in the truck with them and rides off. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting.
That was interesting.
I thought it was really interesting that Cinta did some real badass parkour. She
sure did.
She rested up. She's rested up.
I guess. And why she didn't break both ankles with that first jump, I really don't know.
She's good. But then we know, somebody else has pointed this out. Somebody pointed this out to me on Blue Sky as well. It's been talked about on the Discord. Is that it's Cinta who reassigns Drina, who is the driver,
right?
Who then is the one that shepherds the old woman away, who's coming home with her shopping,
right?
Which then takes Vel out of pocket, which then puts Sam out of pocket, which then leads to Cinta being shot. Now, there's some great visuals foreshadowing in the montage. There are two back-to-back shots where Cinta is going out to check the placement of where she's going to put the charges. And Vel is in the alleyway, and they pause and they look at each other, and we're looking over Vel's shoulder at Cinta. Then we cut and we see, I forget the exact order, maybe the opposite way around. There's a previous shot where Vel is in the street, and we're looking back and we see Sam behind her. So what these two shots do together is triangulate Cinta's final position when Chekhov's blaster goes off.
Yeah.
And there's this one long look back. Vel and Cinta look at each other. And Cinta standing where she's ultimately going to meet her fate.
Yeah.
Exquisite visual storytelling again.
Unbelievably fine.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the kiss. It was earned. That was an earned kiss. I was so, and I didn't even, it took, I had to go after the episode. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Two women just kissed on a Disney show. on a Star Wars Disney show. Like, it didn't even hit me in the moment.
And your problem with that is? I know it's not your problem.
No, zero. Like, my problem is zero. The story was it was so natural for them to have that moment.
Yes.
That I didn't even think of the society-wide impact potential of it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, things have moved along significantly, not enough, but enough so that we wouldn't think of it in the moment because they set it up so well.
Beautiful.
You know, we've seen their relationship as comrades in arms. Mm-hmm. We've seen their relationship as, lovers struggling to maintain that position. We've seen their relationship as separated, and now they've come back together. And so, of course, one kiss before dying. We got to have that.
And let's listen to Vel's monologue to Sam after all of this has gone down.
Really heartbreaking.
Look at me. Look at me. There's no place to hide. Look at me. I'm not going to say remember this because I don't have to. This is on you now. This is like skin. You're taking her with you wherever you go for the rest of your useless life. Don't you look away from me.
I'm sorry.
She was a warrior. She was everything that you have daydreamed about. She was a blooded, fearless warrior whose loss will be mourned in ways that you will never understand. She was a miracle. And you, to die like this because of you. Some whining, simpering, foolish child. Don't you dare cry. You'll make up for this forever.
Your kitty knows that you're distressed.
She came for a pet.
Kitties know these things.
My God. What a scene.
Yeah. What I see in Vel's cruelty is the depth of her grief. And I'm sorry that she had to express it that way. Mm-hmm. I understand why she needed to express it that way. But in a nutshell, this is exactly what Cassian saw.
Right.
And I think now Vel is realizing.
But she doesn't know that Cassian was there on a pre-scouting mission.
You don't think she does?
No.
Or maybe she doesn't. All right.
No.
So
why that would be if I were an operative sent in after the fact. Oh, Cassian did a shit job. I didn't like his answer. Now I want you to go in and give the answer that I want. I'm not taking that mission.
Yeah. No. I mean.
Yeah. And then you don't want that cell, right? That's if one of them gets captured, you don't have the information to trace back to the other.
Yeah. So, whichever way it was, I'm wondering if she's now rethinking Luthen to some degree. Not recognize. I mean, also, I'm sure self-reproach. Why did I even include this person? Because I knew he was a weak point in the risk. Why did we risk our lives for this kind of what she sees as incompetence?
Right. That's going to lead to some bad outcomes.
At the same time, what did Vel and Cinta do to earn anybody's trust around that table?
Fair.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
They came in as goddesses and said, we're here to make sure you do it right. And the only way you can do it right is if you do exactly what you tell us. Well, that does nothing to reassure people, to link them to you in any fashion, particularly since, again, as we discussed earlier.
This is power over.
It is absolutely power over at its most devastating. And Vel is also devastated. But the recognition that there are two different objectives going on here. I mean, the tactics, they're agreeing on the tactics, but not the objectives. I'm finally beginning to learn the difference between all these things. And again, at the same time, this is the risk that everybody takes anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And Cinta knew it as well as
right.
anybody.
Yep.
Aren't people going to die by intent as well as by accident?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the reason why the grief was so profound was that she'd finally gotten her back.
Right. Yeah.
And now she's lost her.
Screw you, Tony Gilroy. And keep doing it to us because we love to feel the feelings.
What can she do
but
pour out all of that grief and sorrow and anger and regret on what she perceives to be as the cause of it all? But I'm sorry, he was just a link in a causal chain.
Right. Yep. Because
he was the weakest link.
Yep.
And he broke.
And if Drina, if Cinta hadn't moved, like you can't, and you can play that game forever. It's a downward spiral, and you have to stop it at some point.
And I'm not going to say Vel does not deserve her grief.
Right. No.
She will go through her process, and I honor whatever her process is. But I kind of began to wonder, is Luthen going to see loving connections as an advantage in his people from now on?
He doesn't have love in his life.
No, and
he even says, whatever. I woke up to a calculation, however many years ago, that I have to burn my humanity.
Yes.
And humanity, we are no matter how extrovert or introvert you are, whether you're, you want to live in a cabin in the woods by yourself, or you want to live in the most densest city. The fact is that we are a species that needs connection with each other. We're in relation to each other all the time, whether I'm rejecting it and moving away, or whether I'm in it. It's still there's still a tether between us and our community.
Mm-hmm. And to some degree, not questioning Luthen's orders.
Mm-hmm.
Did they really not see that there was somebody at that table who really wasn't on board?
Yeah. And it's interesting because when Vel challenges them, nobody says, "Yeah, we'll follow." Rylas, nothing.
Yeah.
He says, "When are you thinking about doing this?" Nobody agreed. Nobody said, "Yes, ma'am, we'll follow your orders."
Exactly.
They just
they still think it's a collaboration instead of
a
top-down operation.
Right. I have to really acknowledge Sam, the actor, whoever played him. I could just feel those hot tears of shame pouring out of him.
Yes.
I really felt for him, because that moment when he's so gutted in the actor's portrayal, the sobs, the heaving sobs.
Incredible.
But he's having that profound realization that he is not who he thought he was.
And doesn't Vel just nail that to the wall?
Boom.
And I'm pretty sure this is the first time he's ever killed a human.
Absolutely, it is.
Moreover, he did so accidentally, and it was one of his own supposed comrades.
Yep. And so the shame that he's feeling about all of that is just pouring out of him.
I'll be surprised if he survives.
He's going to survive, or he's going to take it and wear it like skin and become one of the most ruthless and effective Ghorman front fighters that they have.
Maybe.
Yeah, we don't know. We probably won't know. The way they're telling the stories.
Yeah. I think he was more of the fist bumper than the open heart group.
Right.
So he might eventually come around that way, but
we have to see how he internalizes it. That's a really interesting story too. How does his own heart now internalize that?
If I learn next episode that he hung himself, I would be in no way surprised.
I could equally. I think there's the spectrum is that's one end, and then the other spectrum is he becomes a death wielding,
stone cold
killer. Yeah. The reality is it would be somewhere in between, right? But this is dramatization. Probably. So
right.
All right. Anything else on this? I just thought that writing was so superb from Vel's monologue.
Stunning.
Yeah,
absolutely stunning. I hope that none of the dialogue writers have ever had the kind of experience,
right?
Gave them experiential knowledge,
right,
of just exactly how devastating those words were.
They're hitting some deep truths. This writer's room. It's pretty wild. Right. Let's go to Skulldune's party. We start with the senators taking their oaths of office, which disturbs Mon Mothma. Kleya and Luthen order an Uber XL and head to Skulldune's party, where I hope I didn't make you spit your water there.
Absolutely not. Okay. I'm fine.
John does that every once in a while. He'll say something to make me laugh.
He gives you spit takes. Okay.
Where Perrin and Mon Mothma also arrive, and they're greeted by Bail Organa. Luthen and Kleya work the crowd, while Lonnie, Hurt, and Legret enjoy the excesses of Skulldune's party. And Mon Mothma questions Luthen about Vel out of an abundance of care for her cousin. Mm-hmm. Kleya scoops up an unsuspecting Lonnie to aid in her removal of the bug from the Tinian Codex. And because it is such a festive evening, it turns out that Director Krennic is there. And
oh, boy.
Skuldune introduces Luthen to him, and Mon Mothma and Krennic have a bit of a bout of verbal fencing.
You could say so.
I want to play this clip. This is the last clip.
Senator Mothma, Perrin Firther, I'm sure you've met before.
Oh, yes, I've been a guest at her committee several occasions.
How pleasant to see you free of the witness stand.
What a festive evening this has become.
Brilliant
How awesome
line.
Is that writing?
Brilliant line. I'm glad that Pendergast is not the only one who gets the brilliant lines. This was such a slayer. Oh, boom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Couldn't even feel it going in.
And we have a great email feedback later that we're going to get into about some of what Krennic is laying down about, like, do words have any meaning? And, you're a rebel, my terrorist kind of stuff. So
yes.
We'll get into that when we get into the feedback. Real quick lore question, Bail Organa. Alicia wrote in a little note for me here about Leia's probably still on Alderaan, but should be headed to Coruscant next year. So that'll be 2 BBY. In book canon, Mon has already met Leia this year, but that clearly happened off screen, assuming it did.
Sure.
And then next year, she expects to see Leia at Senate, assuming that we have those story elements there. And then there is this great scene of the Oath Keeper, who is giving the oath to all of the senators and their investiture. And there's a quote that Alicia sent me a link for the Wikipedia page, which we're relying on a lot for our primary encyclopedia source for all this stuff. And there's other sites too, but that's the one like you often end up when you're on your initial search.
Of course.
And that the oath of office has a provision in it that specifically says that you'll not use your Senate offices for the purposes of espionage.
Dun, dun, dun.
So Mon Mothma, I think, might be violating that tenet. So,
do we think that's a new addition, or do we think it's always been?
I can't tell you the lore. I have almost next to no lore knowledge of the Imperial Senate. So
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
Alicia Andor listeners, write in.
I love the paparazzi droid that we get. We got the disco ball droid, and now we got a paparazzi droid. And there's an interesting question when Legret, who's one of the third ISB officer, shows up, and meets up with Lonnie and Hirt. I think it's Hirt says, I forget the exact line. But they ask him about where his companion is, like where's your, male buddy. I have buddy in quotes on here. I don't know why. So I don't know what they were pointing to there, but it was a very pointed line. And so I was wondering what Legret's domestic situation is, if they were hinting at something along those lines.
Could be. I can't help you there.
I love that Kleya didn't have a plan and she was winging it.
Isn't that often the case? Because, of course, they had not planned ahead for this.
Yeah,
and
right.
I think that's why the two of them together are an excellent pairing, because Kleya is all about the details, and Luthen is all about the improvising.
Right.
And now Kleya's got to take a leaf from his book.
Right. I'm just rearranging some notes here because you had a note out of order. I wanted to add a couple more lore bits. There's no lore referencing Luthen's ring, the pre-Carvian ring from the 3rd millennia, which actually turns out to be from the Lost Empire era.
Ooh.
So no lore on that. And then there's no references to the Battle of Carmine, which they talk about, which is where they're fencing. And I couldn't find any lore, about the Tinian Codex. So all of this seems to be fresh for the show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Should we read Kito's feedback now, or should we save it for the feedback section? Let's save it for the feedback section.
I think that would be
we'll take a break before flow. When we cut. But I have to laugh. Okay, so just the editing, the tension between the party and the heist, it was just beautifully, cut together. Mm-hmm. And Clea, her bleeding as she's trying to, twist the key thing. Like all of that was fantastic.
She forgot to bring her can of WD-40. Unfortunately, I think the aroma would have been noticeable and out of place.
About killing Krennic, it makes me think of a question that comes up around war. Oh, should we have just assassinated the number 1 leader or the number 2 leader? And there's a whole debate about the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, who was sort of the second in command of below Hitler, who was assassinated by Czechoslovakian partisans. And there's this, should we have done that, or should we, So there's this whole interesting thing of like, oh shit, what if we had killed Krennic? Would the Death Star have? In retrospect, right?
Of course it would.
Sure.
It's, again, it's not the individuals, it's the system.
Right.
And the system is composed of people who
are individuals, right.
And cooperate with it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the more along the lines of the solitary hero trope.
Right.
The solitary hero taking out the solitary big bad. And
right.
Everybody gets to dance with Ewoks. And
Yub. Let's not.
I'm not slamming Ewoks.
No.
Ewoks.
No, and I don't want to get into an Ewok accent contest.
No.
All right. Well, if you don't, great scene. I don't think there's a lot to dig into in depth here. We'll get into what Krennic was saying when we get to Kito's email.
Yeah, I really, for once, I enjoyed Clea struggling.
Yeah,
which is not nice to say. I admire
it's great
her
to see
improvisation.
Her doing something.
Right, but the bringing Lonnie over to it as a but how much Luthen was annoyed with Cassian for knocking on his door.
Right.
How much has she now exposed Lonnie?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. If that happens 1 or 2 more times, people are going to start thinking.
So great. Let's talk about Bix's revenge.
Oh, yes.
Earlier, we see Bix taking down her meds from their hiding place. Cassian wakes to find Bix looking out the window, and she tells him that the signal light is flashing, meaning that they need to make contact with Luthen. Bix is adamant that whatever the next mission is, she's going on it.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Gorst returns to his office in the new facility. He's brought himself a little treat to snack on later. Bix is waiting for him. She straps him into the chair, puts the headset on him, sets the controls to maximum, and as she leaves, she shoots the guard. She meets up with Cassian, who triggers the bomb, which destroys part of the naval facility, presumably to cover their tracks and hide evidence.
Not to mention, spreading Gorst's body all over the
right, exactly.
floor.
Yeah, for sure.
Which means that since she's in this mode, she doesn't have the satisfaction of knowing that he actually will have to live with it forever.
Right.
Forever is a very short amount of time in this instance.
So you have things to say about Bix's quote-unquote rehabilitation.
Yeah, this is the whole thing about they finally recognized if they want to be together, they have to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, found what an incredible team they are.
Mm.
I mean, if you think about it, we see these 3 heists. I think of them as 3 heists.
Aldani.
Ghorman, hardly a success.
Mm-hmm.
And
what are the 3 heists? Wait, sorry, what are the?
Sorry, the Ghorman's trying to heist the military material. Clea having to hike.
Oh, got it. Okay, right. I got you. Get the bug out. Yeah. Okay, I got you now.
And now this heist, in a way, is Bix reclaiming her agency.
Got it.
And also removing Gorst from the table, which, let me tell you, I think is no small thing.
Great, and why we don't see any of Gorst's technology in, obviously, films that were in television shows that were made before this. But we've removed him from timeline now, so it makes sense that we don't see any of Gorst's technology in future.
Yeah, instead we have yet another droid, the beeping droid that looks like something from the dentist's office coming into Leia's cell in the very first movie.
Exactly.
That's about the extent of
it. And if they destroyed that facility and all his research and all the a bunch of the materials and stuff like that. So, yeah.
But I'm so struck by the struggles and the scrambles and the first two heists. They were improvising, they were fumbling. Bix and Cassian knew exactly what they were doing. They had it timed to the second. And they walked in there and owned it.
She didn't hesitate to shoot that guard.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They were so clear. And I hadn't thought of this at first, but again, from the Discord discussion, it seems pretty clear to me in retrospect that this was Luthen's way of bringing Bix back into it.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
Because at first I said, oh, kind of jazz handy. How do they know this and that and the other thing? Well, Lonnie did tell it to Luthen, though we didn't actually see that. Luthen said, okay, here's a chance for Bix to reclaim her agency. Again, from his deep knowledge of human trauma and drug use and all the rest of it. And also from Cassian banging on this. If you want me, you got to have her. And she needs to be healthy and active now. And it was an excellent upbeat ending. I was a little worried that it was not going to go this way, and very pleased.
Where we kind of had a downbeat on 3 with Mon Mothma trying to lose herself from the sort of pain of what's going on all around her.
Yeah, exactly. And, is this going to clear her altogether of her PTSD? Probably not. But it does get them over the hump of, don't protect me, let me have agency, let me participate.
She does the infiltration. She does all the work. Cassian's waiting for her outside. He says, this is yours. And then she nods to him like, you can blow it now.
Exactly. And he has his satisfaction.
Exactly.
As her lover who saw her suffering, he could do,
she had to do it
about it. And yet he had this satisfaction of just blowing it all up so that nobody else would ever have to suffer that way again.
Right.
It was perfect. It was just magnificently planned. And I don't usually heap praise upon such violent behavior.
I have to ask you, we have a couple of diagnostic or frameworky kind of things around the Lorehounds. We have the Shippey test, and we have the Lopez test. We have the Pukila scale, which measures relative violence as from the Rings of Power season 1, plus or minus. Where is this season so far falling on the scale of your namesake?
Well, I find it acceptable because
you're still here. You're podcasting.
I'm still here and podcasting. Clearly, I feel some enthusiasm for it all.
Right.
I hope it comes through. The nature of the violence is not gory. I did not like the whole. In fact, I had to stop watching it from season 1. The whole scene where Gorst put the thing on her.
Right.
That kind of psychological trauma induced. No, I did not like that.
Right.
But for the rest of it, within the context, this is a rebellion. There's going to be violence. They're not being spattery. With that one exception so far, they're not being the psychological terror. They have had very few jump scares. These are all the sorts of things that I really don't like.
Right. Okay. So,
and any of the violence that's present is often set up in advance. I wasn't expecting Senta to be shot, but with a bunch of dodgy people who are doing this for the first time, and yes, one person with a gun that shouldn't have. This is going to happen. So I'm not good at assigning numbers and scales.
Okay. I was going to think if it's a +1.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So
that sounds about right. Yeah.
Sorry, Marilyn, what were you saying?
No, just that I think it was all suited to the plot, to the context, and to the characters.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's the story and how they handle the characters that are most important to me. Speaking of which, there's one other thing we haven't really touched upon yet. But when Cyril was...
Wait, only one?
Well, sorry. Only one that I have on my list.
Got it.
Fair point, David.
Thank you.
When I found myself wondering, we saw Cyril watching the whole heist on Ghorman and reporting to Dedra and so forth. They make a point of showing him looking pretty horrified by Cinta being shot and literally turning away from what was going on. And I suddenly began to wonder, is he even suspecting at this point that he's being used? And if he ever does realize that.
Which is what Partagaz told Dedra, like, you've got to compartmentalize. You got to box. You got to put a box around Cyril that he'll never understand the true scope of this, all the way to the Death Star, right? Like he gets to play at spy, but he can't ever understand the full reach of what's going on here.
Well, he lived through that whole riot on Ferrix and saw that, yes, people can get killed in this.
Twice. He's had two quite violent encounters on Ferrix, actually.
And given his somewhat rigid nature, that which does not bend will break. And I wondered what the showrunners wanted us to take away from that scene.
It's interesting because I have a little different headcanon for it as well.
Oh, well, please tell me.
I thought it was more of just the... I don't know that he could see who got shot or necessarily put two and two together because he kept saying, I can't, shots fired. I can't see.
Right.
Can't move. And I think it was more just the adrenaline rush wearing off and that he sort of left there in that state of, and he's so happy and so excited to be doing, this kind of operation, this kind of spy stuff.
Sure.
And he's been keyed up. And so I think he's, it just sort of washed out. The adrenaline is gone away. And now he's in the in a post-action crash.
Interesting.
So
interesting.
Now I know there are Cyril fans out there, Alicia, who are hoping for his redemption arc. And there are a lot of people who are like, no, we don't see it. So who knows? Like Gilroy could do something. We don't know.
He can do all kinds of things.
Yeah. We should stop saying Gilroy because it's a team of writers, right? So, Gilroy and co.
Sure. I'm not sure he has enough flexibility to have a redemption.
It's a question, isn't it? And what would it take for him to come around?
Well, if he ever learns that Dedra has been using him as a tool, I don't want to be anywhere near it when the explosion happens. And
we had the indication though, because she said, I had you followed.
Yes. And some people interpret that as, oh, that's really kinky.
Yeah, I was the one that was saying that.
And others have interpreted as, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Setting that aside. And when he says to her, I hope you won't be offended if I say this has been the best day of my life. And all she can come up with is, well, I'm happy that you're happy.
Right. Ian had a great comment about that on the episode 5 podcast.
Yeah. He is a damaged soul. And he thinks he's finally found a woman who
is damaged.
Can give him something that he wants. She's as damaged as he is, just in a different direction. And she is every bit as controlling as his mother. And as long as the orders she gives him, however they're couched, follow along with his own desires, everything's fine. But I'm really beginning to think that this incident has led him to start thinking about is this really the right objective? Because, I mean, sure, he's been all about law enforcement for a while, and then he saw, blood on the streets of Ferrix and all the rest of it. Now he's in control of, statistics and whatnot. That's a safe place.
Right.
Order.
Yeah.
Order and discipline.
He even turns the little fondue fork when it's...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now
he's promoted. I think Dedra even says like, oh yeah, he's got promoted twice, and obviously now he's head of things. So he thrives in this world of ordering and cleaning this information and structuring data in this way. So yeah, you're right. That's a really good observation.
And when he first worked for the corporation security, he was so, there is nothing more important than establishing the authority of I think he's beginning to question that.
Okay. All right.
And we shall see.
To be seen.
We shall see.
The only other thing I wanted to point on the cinematography was this. There's tons of reflections, and when Gorst is riding in the elevator up, there's all kinds of reflections.
Yeah. Now that you've mentioned it, I'm thinking back to some things, and I definitely remember those reflections.
Right. All right. We're 2 hours and 15 on the raw recording.
Yes,
We've got
we are.
3 hefty feedbacks emails. So we're going to take a very quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about those.
Yes.
And we're back. All right. First up for feedback is Sarah, aka Angua Lupin, on the Discord. And I'm going to speed read these because we got to keep it moving. Hi, it's Sarah, Angua Lupin on the Discord. Hey, I just repeated myself. Forgive me for the cross fandom references, but I wanted to bring up something from Tolkien's body of work that I think he has direct bearing on Andor and the Rebellion as a whole, especially the early Rebellion. First off, Angua Lupin, thank you for writing in. Thank you for writing a blog post. But never apologize for crossing fandoms in the Lorehounds community.
Hello.
That's what we do. You're home. You've come home to yourself.
Cross fandoms.
You have come home.
And I just gave you a Star Trek reference too.
Yeah, well, we got some Trek stuff coming up this year too. Tolkien espousas 2 distinct. Maybe you should read. Do you have it open? Can you read?
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because I'm going to butcher the the Tolkien pronunciations.
Tolkien espouses 2 distinct concepts of hope in his mythos, called Amdior and Estel. Amdior is hope based in reality, or hope where there is reason to have hope, while Estel is hope based in faith, or hope beyond all reason. Or as I like to call them, hope in light and hope in darkness. That's, again, Angua talking. The former is what we mostly think of when we use the word hope in English, but I think the concept of Estel is particularly relevant to rebellions, and I quite agree. Estel is the hope that keeps you going when all hope is lost. It's the hope that makes you continue to do the right thing, even when, as Tolkien puts it, no songs will be sung of you hereafter. God, just anyway.
And to think that this was born out of some of his experiences in World War I, and
absolutely.
When he was facing these same things, just enough to really grapple with it, but not suffer the devastatingness of it. Right? He was able to step back just enough.
Yeah, I mean, he suffered the devastating loss of 2 of his
absolutely
friends,
right,
which piled on top of the loss of his mother and earlier his father.
Right.
So he definitely knew.
Experiencing the horrors of trench warfare and
did his best to ensure that songs would be sung of you hereafter by publishing the poetry of one of those 2 friends and by writing Lord of the Rings. So yeah, definitely there. It's the hope that carried Frodo through Mordor, even when, as he said, no memory of grass nor flower is left to me. There's some inbuilt Catholicism in the strict definition of Estel, but frankly, I don't think it's relevant. Which is interesting because, and this is Marilyn talking now, I'm not sure how much Catholicism there is in that necessarily, because faith in the hope of things unseen is certainly Christian. I take the whole thing of Estelle to be, there is no promise that this will come about. But I'm going to live in the hope. When Aragorn is dying, he says, behold, we are not bound forever to the circles of the world, and beyond them may be more than 3. So it's definitely something that is not grounded in certainty, which supposedly the Catholic faith provides. Anyway, sorry, Tolkien scholar, couldn't resist. My apologies, Angua. This is your email interpretation, and I will come back to it now. It is very clearly the hope that motivates most of the characters in Andor, and I absolutely agree. Luthen is explicit about this in season 1 when he says, I burn my life for a sunrise I'll never get to see. Boy, that's going to be on t-shirts, and, I'm waiting for the tattoos and all the rest of it to come forth. We see it as season 2 progresses, becoming much more strongly a motivation for Cassian. We see it in Saw. We see it in Clea. I expect we'll see it with Vel now. And Mon is heading in that direction as well. None of them expect to see that sunrise, but they must reach for hope anyway, or they would stop doing what they are doing. It reaches its ultimate expression in the famous line from Cassian in Rogue One.
Jin, actually, but yeah.
Yes, I do believe it is. Yeah. It is actually Jin who says this. Rebellions are built on hope. She does say it to Cassian, though, and maybe it sets his mind remembering a few things. Then Angua sends in a second email. Nemec, how could I forget my boy Nemec? Yeah, I was thinking about this the whole time I was reading your post, Angua, so I'm not surprised that you sent a second one in. In my defense, my head is very much in season 2 right now. Definitely. Estelle is a very definition of his, Nemec's manifesto. It's written into the very soul of it. Nemec has no reason to believe that the rebellion will defeat the Empire. He has no reason to believe the rebellion will happen at all. All evidence points to the contrary. But Nemec has hope. Hope that, quote, there are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause, close quote. I loved that part of the manifesto. Hope that, quote, one single thing will break the siege, close quote. Hope that everything he does will bring about that sunrise, even if he never gets to see it. Hope beyond reason. That is what Estelle is, and I absolutely agree with that. Remember this, try. But it is, I think, equally clearly not the hope that Leia references when she is handed by the Death Star plans at the end of Rogue One. That is Andor. What Cassian has done, Cassian and all the rest of the crew of Rogue One, is turn Estelle, hope in darkness, into Andor, hope in light. They have given the rebellion reason to have hope based in reality instead of hope based solely on faith. And that, I think, is a worthy story to tell and one we should keep with us as Andor becomes increasingly grim. Hope is a light in dark places. Absolutely. I'm there 100%. I'm sorry that this email ended up so long. Feel free to edit if you want. I would not take out a single word. I don't think David would either.
Do not apologize.
Sarah, Angua Lupin, it's a Discworld reference. It absolutely is. And Angua is one of my favorite Discworld characters. Speaking of bringing in other universes, P.S. I am physically incapable of talking about Star Wars without referencing Rebels. So, I think Alicia probably appreciates that. So, Estelle is the hope Hera references when she says, quote, we have hope things will get better, close quote, in season 1 of Rebels, that is. Andor is the hope Ezra gives the galaxy when he yeets Thrawn and the Seventh Fleet off the board in season 4. I don't expect you to include this. Well, I think it absolutely belongs here. I've only recently discovered the term yeet, and I enjoy it very much. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it basically means tossing somebody out.
Yeah, tossing somebody.
The Prancing Pony podcast uses the term yeet.
Okay.
A lot, so that's how I know it.
Yeah, this was just a beautifully put and beautifully written, and I loved the second email about Nemec, and then this idea. I mean, again, we are not a podcast about current politics. We talk about politics and big ideas in the abstract, but we all know there's a reality right now that we're living through, and sometimes it feels dark. And it, for me, to have these two new words that I didn't know, and I'm not a Tolkien scholar. I didn't know about this. It really is. I'm just very grateful that Angua Lupin wrote this in, because now I have something to use for myself on any given morning and any given day, depending on what the news cycle is and all the other things going on in the world. I have a spectrum to place myself in, and I don't have to feel that things are hopeless. But
that's lovely, David.
Actually, there's all there. It's happening all over. It's all around us. It may suck where you are right now. It may not. You may have Alicia was talking about this earlier. It's come up. There are people who benefit indirectly or directly from oppressive regimes, and they may not even realize it, and not. And there are those who are directly affected by it, and we're all sort of swimming around in this. But this idea that just because it feels hopeless doesn't mean that there is no hope.
Well, and I'm going to go back to Tolkien again, because I always
of course you do
this and quote Gandalf, who says, "Despair is for those who see all outcomes beyond possibility of doubt. We do not."
And now I'm going to bring in Conclave.
There you go.
And talk about certainty is the enemy to faith.
Yep.
And you and I are going to talk about Conclave. We're going to have a short.
I can't wait. Yeah. I can't. A short.
Yeah,
short.
I know, right? But it'll be a subscriber only. Well, no production value. We're just going to literally hit record and start talking.
We're going to have fun.
Because I was on my flight back. I was like, oh, what do I watch? Oh, I'll watch Conclave again. And I was like, oh, will you take my confession for the
bless you, my son.
For the Oscars coverage, I should have chosen Conclave as my number one pick.
Yeah, so, I heard you say that. Teo Absolvo.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we got to keep things moving here. We have Quito.
Yes.
Quito says, hi, Lorehounds. David asked me if I would write something. Yes, I did. I was bracing people on the Discord. So here are her thoughts, their thoughts. Andor in philosophy, doing injustice with words and categories. One part of episode 6 that stuck out to me was the short exchange between Mon and Krennic. Mon, you seem fixated on defining people by their opposition to power. Krennic, words do still have meaning. Given the context, I think we can assume that one of the words they're talking about is criminal or equally terrorist. For Krennic, the matter is simple. Of course they're criminals. That's what criminals are, breakers of the law. He's technically correct. But what he misses is the following. Words and categories like criminal are often created and changed in ways that oppress people. Philosophers sometimes call this ontic injustice. Note, this is Quito's email continuing, not me. Note, this is not my area of expertise, but I'll do my best. Philosopher Catherine Jenkins explains that an ontic injustice happens when someone is wronged by the very fact of being socially constructed as a member of a certain group. Somebody with a hair color, somebody with an eye color, somebody who wears certain clothing. That's me talking. The ontic part means that people are made to be criminals. They acquire the property of being criminal by the creation of laws and punishment systems. Cassian, this is me talking. Cassian was made a criminal because he was walking
on the beach.
And he got a 6-year sentence when it was normally, 6 months or something. I forget.
6
the
months,
PORD.
right.
And the PORD is an example of this, the Public Order Resentencing Directive. But crucially, this categorizing can be unjust. Criminal doesn't only describe, it negatively evaluates. This injustice is especially clear if a government deems some actions crimes which are in fact completely morally permissible. Same-sex marriage,
exactly.
quote-unquote interracial marriages, right?
Yeah.
This might be what Mon is getting at. The Empire has this preoccupation with defining people as criminals. Mon's comment that crime rates are rising across the galaxy suggests that the Empire is widening the scope of criminal, quote-unquote criminal, thereby increasing the extent of ontic injustice committed against citizens of the galaxy. Of course, ontic injustice isn't perpetuated only by fictional fascist empires. It happens in our own world, and to lots of words and categories. voting, marriage, gender, and so on. These concepts get created and shaped in oppressive ways, often by excluding people unjustly. In the case of criminal, including them unjustly. And I think that a great example for me of this is an undocumented person as opposed to an illegal person.
Right.
They're very morally, are they illegal, or are they just have they broken a particular administrative law? And
I'm also thinking of the word unhoused.
Yes, exactly. It's not them; it's a circumstance, and we're disassociating the circumstance from the person.
As opposed to homeless,
right? And then I'm thinking about there's I forget the exact Latin words. There's basically 2 Latin phrases from law, meaning something that is not permissible by law. Oh, you did 30 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone, right? That's administrative law. And then natural crimes. You murdered somebody, or
you married somebody.
Yeah,
right.
You took something knowingly that it wasn't yours to take, right? So anyway, carrying on with Kito's email. The social world is literally what we make it.
Of course.
Will we make it's an agreement, right? It's all in conversation. Will we make it just or not? And I don't mean to diminish that. Sorry, just the conversation thing, but it literally is just a words that we've agreed upon means and construct our social reality. Right. There's a whole social constructivism philosophy and sociology, which I am not an expert in. Andor encourages us to ask that question and take action in the affirmative. If folks are interested in all this, they can check out Jenkins's book, Ontology and Oppression, Race, Gender, and Social Reality. There's also a talk on YouTube if you'd rather not read. Hope that's helpful, interesting in some way. Love the podcast. You folks are doing a fantastic job. Best wishes, Kito, Discord. Well, Kito, this is a fantastic email.
Yes, it is. And thank you for your kind words.
Yeah. And again, there's a reality that we're living. And then we're also not trying to be a podcast that's advancing a specific political agenda or whatever. But if you have any doubt about where we might be on things, it's clear. But I think it's a very important point is that the PORD and what Gilroy is doing in the story is that the Empire is using a legal definition and altering legal definitions to create people who are therefore classed as criminals, who can therefore be exploited for the purposes of the Empire.
Which is why they are simply going to try to figure out how to build more prisons instead of taking a look at who is being classed as a criminal. There's a similar example to this. For a bunch of years when I worked at my college, I led ally trainings for folks who wanted to know more about LGBTIQ. And the first exercise that I did was to have them call out as many words as they could think of for heterosexual. And we came up with maybe half a dozen. And then I said, okay, how many words for gay? And sometimes I was writing for 10 or 15 minutes. And I said, this is an example of the power dynamic of dominant and subordinate groups in which the dominant group gets to name the subordinate group because the dominant group is considered to be normative. Not normal, folks. I hate that word normal. Normal is a setting on a washing machine. It's laden with value judgments.
Right.
But normative is a statistical analysis that can be done. So you get, if you are part of the dominant group, you get to name the other. The interesting thing was everybody was hesitant when the exercise first starts. They're not sure, is it okay to say these words aloud? And then I point that out and say, imagine being part of a group whose name is so shameful that people don't even want to speak it.
Oh, God, yeah.
This is the power of language.
It shapes our very reality.
Yes, if the guy behind the screen thinks that it's a nuclear attack, he's going to push the button, whether or not it actually was. So perception shapes reality.
And we use language to mediate to mediate the two sides of it, the worlds. All right. Transmission from Echo Squadron. Hi, Marilyn, David. This is an email from Alicia.
Hi, Alicia.
She says, I know, I already got my say in episode 5, LOL. But when Ian and I were talking about the writing of female characters in that breakdown, there was something I couldn't bring up because it was a big episode 6 spoiler, Cinta's death. I understand that Cinta dying emphasizes the pointlessness, stupid deaths that happen in a climate of fear like this. However, I do not understand why she needed to come into this sick and weaker than ever as well, as that didn't play into the story at all. I hope we will find out more about that sickness. There will have been a point to it other than keeping her away from Vel, but I fear she will be quickly forgotten as forgotten as Tay by the next 1 year later, although, of course, not by Vel. I do want to actually take issue with this. She had an injury related to something that happened a year ago, and it took her a year to rest up. But when she does that parkour move off the top of the truck, I didn't read that as she was in any way diminished.
No, I didn't see that either.
Okay.
She seemed to be back and firing on all cylinders, or I don't think that she would have been given this assignment. Emotionally,
she was very vulnerable with Vel, and I get that you know, that there was something different from what we saw, because before when we saw Vel as sort of cold as ice. So, Alicia, if this is if we're not picking up on something that you did, I guess it wasn't clear to us. So maybe you can illuminate it on the Discord or send in a feedback to episode 9, which is the next one, or to episode 7 to John.
And I certainly think that Cinta came across as very strong and certain outside of her scenes with Vel. As you were saying, she's very vulnerable with Vel, and this might be the first time that she's allowed herself to be
Absolutely. That. It's new for her. She's been so locked down ever since the death of her family and all that stuff. And
Right. But as she presented to the Ghormans, I think she presented every bit as stern and resolute and strong as did Vel.
Right. All right. So continuing her, Alicia's email, it's just another example of something that is not an egregious writing sin because, as I keep saying, Tony Gilroy is a stupendous writer of spy intrigue, but it butts up against too closely to the tropey female stereotypes in a way that, again, screams out to me in the lack of women in the writing room. Just one example in a show I love, and I hope I will be wrong about there being no point to this final portrayal. Just as I hope I am wrong about where Bix's storyline is going, we shall see. It does, at this point, however, remain my biggest gripe with the show, and I figured it was best to bring it up now, as I said, as I fear it will be irrelevant by next week. That's it. Can't wait to hear your breakdown of this incredible episode, Elisha. P.S. If you want to see Varda Sethu, who plays Cinta, in a role where she plays such a different character, a happy and confident one, that she's completely unrecognizable, check out the new season of Doctor Who, where she plays the new companion, Belinda Chandra. Episodes 2 and 3 of this season, 3 are released so far at the time of this recording, are especially good. And John and Alicia and sometimes Ian are doing joint coverage of Doctor Who as we're going on here. Because, we're crazy like that. We only have The Last of Us and, they just came off Wheel of Time. And, of course, we have Andor, It's
You don't need to sleep. You don't have
family.
Else to do. You don't need to eat.
PPS on a completely different fun topic, picking up on my and Ian's speculation about Cyril and Enza possibly having a thing next arc. The Star Wars... Enza is the daughter of Rylaz, who's the Bri.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
The Star Wars website Holocron Lore Databank points out that Enza and fellow Ghorman Front operative Dylan are current item Rutro. So maybe it's squashing that. Who knows? We'll see where that all goes. Thanks, Alicia, for writing in. And again, apologies if we misreading your email. But I didn't interpret the same thing that you interpreted. So if you have some clarifications, definitely let us know.
Well, I want to absolutely affirm that people are looking through their own lenses, and therefore their interpretation is right. Is right because this is how they're seeing it, and oftentimes they will point out things to other people.
I'm not picking up on the same
those
thing.
lenses.
Exactly.
Who are not picking up on the same thing. I mean, we've had that happen a couple of times just in this podcast episode today. So,
all right, we're at 2:40. We're going to get out of here under 3. Marilyn, it has been an absolute pleasure. I should have known coming into this that it was going to be 2+, but I thank you for your company and for your wise counsel. Thank you for taking my confession and for being such a fun intellectual partner to kick around stuff that we absolutely love so much.
Oh, David, it's a joy and an honor and a privilege. And thank you for being the one who first drew me into the Lorehounds all those years ago with a question about Barovia.
You're right.
Oh, and by the way, if people are interested in advance on the conclave discussion, I urge you to read the New York Times obituary for Pope Francis.
Oh, okay.
And see what similarities might occur to you.
Interesting.
In that.
Very cool.
Yes.
All right. Reminder, if you want to get ad-free episodes and support the podcast, which means supporting the co-pilots, because everybody's going to be able to share in the revenue from this, you can either get a season pass, which is a one-time $10 single purchase. It's not recurring. And you get all of season 1 back catalog, all of season 2, all of that ad-free. And then you get all these bonus episodes. We're doing the Holocron lore drops. We're going to have one about what's called the Ghorman massacre coming up. Spoiler warnings for that. It's going to come out next week. It may foreshadow what's going to happen on Tuesday, so be a little bit careful. We had another one recently about the Rakatan invaders. And I'm having some side conversations. Hopefully I'm going to talk to Mark and Nicole. They don't know that yet, but I'm coming for them. We've got some video analysis.
Well, they know now. They know now.
Don't know. We've got some video analysis and other things. So you get a whole bunch of stuff for your $10. Or you can, if you feel at home here, you can subscribe as a regular subscriber. And you get bonus episodes like our 11Z's Movie Club, like our Second Breakfast podcast, and a ton of other bonus content. All of that also ad-free. And we have two. You can either be on the Supercast website, which is just like Patreon. It's just set up a little bit differently, or on Patreon. Either way, and you can do monthly or annual subscriptions. So for the price of a meal out in New York City, you can support the Lorehounds for a whole year. Feedback, Star Wars at thelorehounds.com. In the show notes, there is a link tree that has links to all of our other affiliated podcasts. I'm not going to go into all of those right now because I want to get out of here. But Marilyn, you have your own podcast called Rings and Rituals. We have Radioactive Ramblings. We have Properly Howard. We have We'll Shift Dust. We have the Star Wars Canon Timeline Project. Probably a couple others I'm forgetting. And now I'm just going to quickly read our thank yous to not only our Discord server boosters, but to our lore masters. We have a bunch of people on Discord who subscribe to Discord and then they donate their bonus things to us to make the server a better place. And that's Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, Dork of the Ninjas, Duve71, Athena Ajalea, Tina, Lestu, Nancy M, Ghost of Perdition, and Radioactive Richard. Lore Masters are our top tier subscribers. We couldn't do it without them. So Samartian, Michael G, Michelle E, Brian P, SC, Peter OH, Adam S, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Matthew M, Sarah M, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Deadeye Jedi Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dally V, Mothership 61, Gnarls, Kathy W, Lestu, Jeffrey B, Elisa U, Neil F, Ben B, Scott F, Stephen N, Julia F, Collie S, Ilmaril, /Tim, and never forgotten, never last, Adrian. Thank you all so very much for listening. Marilyn, thanks again for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for being such an inspiration for me.
I'm just trying to get by day to day. So
we're doing it.
If you are not able to subscribe, no worries at all. We're just glad that you're here with us. And for those of you who do subscribe, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And
so many new names on that list now. It's really fun.
It is really great. And we'll see you. I'll be back for episode 9, but next week, look out for episode 7 from John and then 8 from Alicia. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk to everyone soon. Bye.
And may Estelle and the Force be with you.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback to starwars@thelorehounds.com and get ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at Patreon or Supercast. Connect with us on Blue Sky. Links for everything in the episode show notes. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.
Lord Vader, Operation Andor is underway.
Excellent. If we release 3 episodes per week, the Lorehounds will never be able to cover every episode. The Imperial forces will crush the rebellion before it begins.
Stand by. We're picking up something on our scanners.
Echo Squadron, reporting in.
Delta Squadron, on your left.
Tango Squadron, on your 6.
With Imperial forces coming in fast, we're calling all rebels to join the fight this season. Starting after the April 22nd premiere, you'll hear 3 full breakdowns for each week's episodes of Andor Season 2. Each podcast will be led by one of our squadron leaders, Alicia, David, and John. We'll be bringing in new and familiar voices to fill out the roster. Search for the Lorehounds on any podcast platform to join us in a galaxy far, far away. And don't forget to check out our season pass for even more content like our Holocron bonus pods. It's good news for anyone, except Darth Vader.